Oh, just tell someone saying something. Oh, here, it's the same. Oh, dear. It's the same.
Okay, I think we'll commence tonight's meeting. Good evening, everyone, and in particular members of the gallery. Thank you for joining us this evening on a very cold winter's night. Agendas have been circulated tonight. We're going to deliberate on the budget for 2016-2017. So we'll commence tonight's meeting, followed by planning straight after the conclusion of this one, or at 7 p.m. We've all got our agendas. The membership is as listed. Number 2, there are no apologies. Item 3, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Disclosure of conflicts of interest? No. Thank you, councillors.
I do have an interest though. On the budget, there's a resurfacing will be in High Street.
So an indirect interest.
That's not a conflict, no, it's an interest.
Just an interest?
Yes.
Just an interest. Okay. We now go to item 4, commencing with the reports, the 4.1 to 2016-17 budget referrals. The opportunity for council to disclose any conflicts within the budget itself there. If there are none, we have a recommendation.
Just note that there are no conflicts declared in relation to this as part of the motion.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Have a second for that?
Happy to second it, Mr.
Second,
Mayor.
Councillor Bellotto. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Next item is 4.2, adoption of 2016-17 council budget and declaration of rates. Can we have someone move that, please?
Happy to move it. I'll also be having an amendment, but I'll move that separately.
Happy to second it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy has moved. Councillor Bellotto has seconded. We will now go on to amendments from councillors, and I understand several councillors have nominated to include amendments, so I'll go through the list provided to me in order of those which were initially submitted. So we have one from Councillor Lawrence, and the points will appear on the screen. So Councillor Lawrence, you have an amendment. Yep. You have a seconder?
Happy to second it, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Councillor Bellotto. Okay, Councillor Lawrence.
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, this amendment is fairly small to the budget. Obviously, it's a $160 million budget. First one is just a note to note recent movements and negotiations that are going on that can't be reflected in the budget, but are obviously going to have an impact potentially further down the track. Second one, am I moving them one at a time?
Do one at a time.
Okay, that's all I need to speak to that.
Okay, so for point 2,
It's a note.
I've got nothing further to add as a second it, Mr. Mayor.
Notation, so nothing really doing all that.
oh, okay.
I've got nothing to add as a
There's
second.
nothing to add. I'll just put that item to a vote. That's that item up there. Add an additional note to the budget, so no impact. I'll put that item to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried. That's included as an amendment. Point 3, Councillor Lawrence.
Point 2.
Point 2, I beg your pardon. Well, it's actually point 2, yeah, 3, but yeah, go on.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this amendment is in response to community submissions that we received.
Councillor Lawrence has moved for this one. Do we have a second for that?
Yeah.
Councillor Greco has seconded.
This is in response to community submissions we've received in relation to improving the gateway entrance at High Street Reservoir at the top end of the city. And while the budget does have landscaping money in for the overall gateway, there was some more specific things that were thrown up by the community regarding enhancing pedestrian involvement in recreation in that area.
Nothing
Yeah,
further to
I'll
add.
just add that in one of my amendments, I had the inclusion of $20,000 for exercise equipment, so I'm glad that Councillor Lawrence has
Right,
voted
that's
that.
been included. There's no further comment or debate. I'll put that item to a vote. All people in favour of that? That item has been included. Thank you, councillors. We now go to the next one from Councillor Lawrence.
Mr. Mayor, number 3 also comes in late, I suppose, in addition to the budget, given that the negotiations and the changes that have occurred recently.
Happy to second it, Mr. Mayor.
Second to Councillor Bellotto.
Changes that have occurred recently with the involvement of federal people being interested in trying to save this public open space, and also negotiations, I believe, that's going on between the council and the state government. Just looking at that, I did think that we needed to actually have money to immediately commence community consultation about any master plan if there is a transfer before the 30th of 2017. And you wouldn't want to be a situation where you were just scrambling for money or leaving it unsafe and vandalised as it is.
Just one question, and I apologise for not asking it during the day, but I'm just wondering whether the 50,000 would be able to come out of the reserve, seeing that it's actually part of that reserve, part of the money for open space.
Yeah, we can. Okay. All right, there's no further comment or debate on that. I'll put that on.
Before we do
Councillor
that,
Gregory.
we need some extra wording in there that the council allocate $50,000 for the master plan. You know, that the money comes from the reserve. Do we need to spell that out in the motion?
Specific, yes.
Because I know it's the columns in terms of whether it's council money or So I would put that inclusion in there just to be a bit more specific and a bit tighter with the budget allocations.
Yep. Okay, so that
I'm
additional wording.
happy with that, Mr. Mayor. Actually, my original draft had and/or the open space reserve added at the end.
Yeah.
All right, so that'll be included.
And/or the open space reserve.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, I'll put that item to a vote. All those in favour? That item has been included in the budget. Thank you, councillors. That concludes the amendments from Councillor Lawrence. Next councillor with amendments from will be from Councillor McCarthy. Second on this. So, Councillor McCarthy, if we can go through yours. Yeah. Councillor McCarthy.
Yep, first one should appear on the screen, hopefully. I'm happy to, while it's being prepared, I'm happy to...
Well, we need a second.
It's important that we...
Include borrowings of $2 million.
That's not me.
All right, do we have a second for that?
That's me. That's not the point D, it's actually the...
Which one are we...
In
We're
red.
looking at the green one.
In
aren't we?
red.
Just a green item. We'll look at the green.
The green.
He's colourblind. That's why
Colourblind, yeah.
I'm happy to second it, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Villela. Very quickly, councillors would be aware that there are a number of master plans, including the one that we've just referred to, either in development or potentially underway over coming months. And I've got two other items relating to the development of master plans. There's also a number of state and federal co-funding opportunities that may become available over the next 12 months. What this is essentially the equivalent of an overdraft facility that would be included in council's budget. As councillors were aware, in the current budget we have $1 million of a loan facility that was made available for the multi-sport stadium. That was not drawn upon, but it was there and available should we needed to have that available to us. The proposal here is to set up basically an ongoing community infrastructure fund, which would be an amount of $2 million, which would be available to council post the council elections, because of course we're unlikely to draw upon this between now and September when we enter caretaker period, and it would allow the new council, should decisions come through in relation to master plans or state and federal funding opportunities, to be able to access funding. That funding could then be repaid in the subsequent year's budget, and the idea here is that this is an overdraft facility. It's termed borrowings because that's what's required under the financial way of describing this, but it would essentially mean that we don't miss out on opportunities and we can demonstrate quick and fast community benefit where we need to. So I think it's a pretty straightforward proposal, and it would be subject to a report and a resolution for that money to actually be drawn upon as is specified in the proposed amendment. But it gives the new council an opportunity to move quickly on master plans if they're completed and actually get those works underway, which shows about delivering the community benefit a bit faster than otherwise.
Seconder, any comments?
Look, I think it's a smart move. We're not actually spending the money. We're not borrowing the money on some unidentified object at this project at this point in time. It's just as Councillor McCarthy said, it's an overdraft facility. If it's deemed, if there's a good business case or the groundwork's been done to speed up certain projects, if there's funding available, I think it's a wise move, and it will be, I suppose, drawn upon. if it's deemed, economically viable and feasible. So, but that's for the next council to determine. But we need to give them that option. Thank you.
Thank you. Officer, comment before I go?
Mr. Mayor, since this action of borrowing $2 million for this purpose will have some effect on the significant effect of the strategic resource plan, and going forward, it's important for councils to understand that effect at least briefly. So our Chief Financial Officer will explain that briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, with regard to the $2 million as proposed in this item, in the budget document it would have to be shown as if the budget, even if we didn't draw it down. In the future years we would have to show the impact as if it had been drawn down. We would have to show the repayments and the interest associated with that loan in future years.
Yeah.
The difficulty with that in this particular budget is at the moment in 2018 we only have a surplus of $55,000. The interest on this loan would mean that our budget in that year would be a deficit.
Councillor Souders.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak against, if I can, and it's timely that the reference has been made to the strategic resource plan, and I draw councillors' attention, without necessarily trying to preempt that, because it is on our items for discussion this evening, to pages 10, 11 and 12. Now, I get the sense that the spirit contained here is more prospective for a future council to determine. That's why I've stayed my hand in terms of what I thought would have been an appropriate juncture at this point to actually have foreshadowed an amendment to the strategic resource plan with respect to borrowings. Because rightly, that's a future determination for a future council. I don't think what we do here today should necessarily bind a future council. But add the spice that Mr. Cochrane has just outlined in terms of the distortion that it's going to create for our budget now and into the future, I think makes it a bit of a folly, really. I mean, the contingencies for any kind of program or project that has not been budgeted for has always been there, Mr. Mayor. We have significant reserves, the envy of most councils in the local government network, and of course we've had from time to time quite considerable amounts of rates, supplementary rates that have come in during the mid-year budget cycle. Our average has been around the $1 million mark, so 1% of rates is nothing to sneeze at. So I just put that in perspective and matched with the reality of what we have to countenance with respect to the accounting process. I don't think it's got any merit at all, Mr. Mayor, and that's where I stand.
Thank you, Councillor Souders. I'll offer my reply if there's no further debate. Quickly,
just
Councillor.
a question, Mr. Mayor. Just in relation to borrowing $2 million from this council, if this council had to borrow $2 million, not this council, but a council after October, what would be the capacity and timelines for doing that anyway?
If council is going to borrow during this year, you need to make that statement in the budget, and we will be changing the budget to reflect that going forward as well, over 10-year plan, so that it will be included. The new council will not be able to come and borrow for something unless the real emergency where we can go back and amend the budget or go to the minister. So the budget you are making up this year will apply to the new council without any change.
Mr. Gregor.
Yeah, just two questions, Mr. Mayor. Just one question is in relation to if council was to go down this path and borrow the money, and we then didn't borrow, as it sort of eventuated in this financial year where we had $1 million to borrow and we didn't borrow, does that mean that there will be no impact on the in the future year in relation to the underlying surplus? That's the first question. Then I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, the budget is set with the assumption we are not borrowing this year and we are not borrowing going forward as per our previous discussion. So if any change to that will have a direct impact to the budget going forward. Not that it cannot be done, but even the individual items are going to have an effect on the going forward.
So just to clarify, so I take that therefore to mean that if we did borrow, And if we did pass this motion and in an event that we didn't borrow because there's no particular activity there to warrant borrowing, then there will be no impact on the next financial year. That follows up from my next question. Then, if we did borrow for some event that came to our attention, my understanding is that next year, when we do the budget, prioritising of the budget can be altered to ensure that we don't go underneath the underlying surplus level, because the next council could actually rejig the budget in a way to make sure that we stay above.
I don't know whether a CFO can add, but I can broadly say this: you are leaving a long-term financial plan for the next council, and they can make any decision they want. Whether you want to be seen as the perceived deficit or that you are leaving for a long term, that's the issue. Yeah, things will change as you go, but when you plan a 10-year plan and tell the community that we are planning this, and that's what you've got to stand by, and council future can make any decision they want.
Okay, look, just on the basis, I'd like to thank you for the responses to those questions. Just on the basis of that, I'm more inclined now that I've heard those clarifications. I'm more inclined now of supporting this motion, and because I think that there is enough wiggle room there for the next council in order to reprioritise the budget. And I understand that this is a 4 years estimates that we have to put forward, but it's not locked in concrete as if we're locking in the same way that we're locking into place our current year budget. So on the basis of that, I think that this particular amendment is supportable, and also just based on our current history. I mean, we had $1 million that we said that we would borrow last year. We did, up till this date, and it seems that we're not going to be borrowing $1 million in the next 2 or 3 days. It's had no impact, but it was good to know that money was there. We know that things come up, like we've had the Reuven site, which is obviously, depending how the negotiations go, would have put a great impost on the council. So I think it's good to have this sort of reserve and this sort of type, if you like, using those last few words there, like this overdraft facility. And if we don't use it, it has no impact. If we do use it, the next council can rejig things. And I'll make this final point: infrastructure is the key thing for this council. At the moment, I think we're just treading water. We've been treading water for some time, and we actually need to think about an infrastructure fund and actually start building this, further building this city.
Okay, look, I might just put that to a vote now, Councillor Lawrence. I think we need to keep moving. So, Councillor McCarthy.
Look, just if I can have one very brief comment.
Close the debate.
Just a point of order. I don't think amendments have a right of reply.
No, you're right. Beg your pardon. Yep. So no, that's it. Sorry, Councillor McCarthy.
All right, that's fine.
I'll put this item to a vote. All those in favour of buying? Those against? That item is lost.
I'll have a division on that. Thank you.
All those in favour, please stand.
In favour of the amendment.
In favour of the amendment, please stand. I name Councillor McCarthy, Villela, Greco. Those against, please stand. I name Councillor Lee, Williams, Cedars, Fontana, Lawrence and Walsh. Thank you. Your next item of consideration, Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So another one.
Seconder.
Hasn't come up yet.
It's just there. Point 2.
Seconder.
Oh, sorry.
I'm happy to.
Go ahead, Councillor McCarthy.
Look, simply one of the submissions, submission 66, I believe it was, made reference to the notion of both expanding the scope and the eligibility of the Solar Savers program to include the potential to make Solar Savers available for not just solar PV but also energy retrofits, which is upgrades to the fixed assets within a building, thereby improving their energy efficiency and therefore reducing the power consumption in that building. This is one way to continue to deliver on Council's Climate Change Action Plan, which of course is up for renewal or up for review this year, but also a way of delivering genuine benefit to both renters who currently can't necessarily always put solar on the roofs but can do energy retrofits to their buildings, Of course, also commercial property owners and small businesses, as well as neighbourhood houses, cooperatives and other sorts of bodies as well. So this is essentially providing funding in the budget for Solar Savers Mark III. This would enable the next council to continue to do great work in relation to solar savers, but also to expand the program to small businesses as well, who currently pay extremely high rates compared to residential property owners, and rightly so often would make the point to say that they don't necessarily see the practical benefit in their own business. So this is an opportunity to actually deliver direct benefit to those small businesses who pay 1.75%. 1.7 of the ratio of the standard residential rate, and delivering something which actually improves their own business bottom line. So, and it, of course, delivers on the great work that we've already done with Solar Savers over the last couple of years, but keeps the momentum going. So I'll end it there.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor?
I'll reserve I'm the seconder. I'll reserve
Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mr Mayor. It is a terrible problem that renters have some of the worst properties and the worst energy efficiency in terms of insulation and of utilities that you get when you rent. Always electricity. So old utilities. However, I've looked at this for a long time, and I think we actually need to do more work on this, given housing prices and given housing inequality in this city. There are people who own dozens of properties that this is going to subsidise. I don't think it's in the spirit of what we've done with Solar Savers, which was subsidise pensioners to get to make the solar switch. We need to do some more work. I don't see why people who own 3, 4 properties in this city shouldn't put their hand in their own pocket and pay for their solar on their asset. So this is a kind of millionaire welfare. They need to have a levy. We need a green levy, and we need to do what they do in New York. There's people in New York who are investing in green buildings because they believe in it, and they're putting their hand in their pocket.
Councillor Vella?
Yeah, I agree. I think this, of course, I support our current Solar Saver program, etc. But I think this does need a lot more work because you want to make sure that...
So you're speaking against?
I'm speaking against it, sorry. I'm speaking against it. It does need a lot more work, so I don't need to reiterate what Councillor Lawrence has said. But I also think this might be space where the state government might move into. I think there might be, I think because it's only been in government for 3 years or so, I think this might be an area where you might be able to form partnerships with the state government, because currently it is investing in renewable energies, and it might be a program or opportunities that the council can form a partnership. So I think it's underdeveloped. I'm not against it, the principle behind it, but there's just not enough information. We don't know exactly where it's going, and the detail is missing. Yeah, a bit premature.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Vella. Just briefly, Councillor Seedis, I'm going to go to a vote after your comments.
On this, Mr Mayor. We had a report recently come to Council, which unfortunately, with Solar Savers Mark II, actually demonstrated that we were undersubscribed for the first time.
Right. Yep.
Now, that is quite sad, but there was a contributing factor, and I'll take that theme that Councillor Vella mentioned, unwittingly, courtesy of the state government, through the reduction of the feed-in tariff. Now, what's interesting is that it's probably got lost in the fog of war of the federal election campaign, but the Premier himself had announced a big project in relation to carbon neutrality towards 2050. But it seems to me that the project or the program is skewed towards big projects. And I think in terms of what you just mentioned, Councillor Vella, we need to actually talk about small-scale projects and the ones we're sponsoring. So the fact that we're going back out to market, Mr Mayor, to actually get the numbers up for this tranche is indicative of the kind of hurdles we need to overcome. So as much as I love this program and I've been obviously being closely identified with it, the fact is we need to take a steady as you go approach in order to reach maturity. And if that means eventually that we team, I suppose, multilaterally with a few other councils to build critical mass in order to make that advocacy pitch towards the state government, and so be it. I don't think at this point in time accelerating it will achieve those outcomes through borrowings. I think what we've got in the budget is actually pretty good, I mean, the recognition is out there, courtesy of the Premier Sustainability Awards, so you can't get a better thumbs up in terms of what we're doing. So I think, you know, when we talk about going forward into the new council, let them do the work in terms of collaboration required, the advocacy to take up and get some co-funding going and really take off where it should go. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Greco, last speaker.
Just very quickly, look, I appreciate the comments that have been made, but I think I'm in favour of this motion, mainly for the reason that we know that it's a very popular initiative. It's won awards. It's put us on the national scene in relation to that, all those sort of things. It's innovation and things like that. And I think we've got to go back to the wording that it says. I know some comments were made about, you know, rental properties or others and things like that. But if we look at the wording, all we're saying there is to extend it for to borrow $1 million, and I would assume that if we pass this motion, the work that comes subsequent to that will be that a report would need to come back to council about how then we use that $1 million. One is to get to the remaining pensioners and the low income people, and also then how we can extend this particular project to include other people. Now I remember when we first passed this motion, we didn't have all the answers. We just said we want to borrow $1 million because we wanted to have a solar panel. Then through a series of meetings, of which many of us have participated, we actually nutted out how that was going to take place. But if we don't have this amendment in there, then we've got nothing to play with. And I think that there is an opportunity to keep the momentum going, to extend the solar project to other people, because I've heard out there that many people have said to me that they would like to be part of the solar project, but for some reason or another they don't meet the criteria or things like that, but they are on low incomes. There's lots of, if you like, low income retirees out there that perhaps they're not pension card holders, but they are on a low income, and I think we need to do some exploration, but we need this instrument in the budget to enable us to do that subsequent work.
Thank you.
So I urge councillors to rethink about it, because if we can't do it, and I'll just finish on this though, if we can't do it, then it could come back and money can be put back.
I'll put that item to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's lost, councillors. Thank you.
Call a division.
Councillor McCarthy's called a division. All those in favour of that item, could you please stand? I name Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Greco. Those against, please stand. I name Councillor Lee, Williams, Cedas Fontana, Lawrence, Walsh and Villela. Thank you, councillors. Next item, Councillor McCarthy is?
Thank you. The next one is provide an allocation for a project which councillors would be aware of.
Seconder.
So I'll leave it there.
Yep. It's been circulated. Do we have a seconder?
Councillor Walsh is seconding, I think.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. You can speak to it.
Thank you. So councillors were written to by Thornbury Kindergarten regarding the unsafe front entrance to their site. It is now an expanded facility because it now has a full kinder program. It previously was mostly maternal child health, playgroups and the like. So we've consolidated a lot of activity on that site. Unfortunately, the front entrance has not kept up with the expectations and realities of having toddlers and babies and prams, and the dangers of being on a fairly busy intersection where there is, of course, a lot of building activity taking place diagonally opposite at the moment as well. Essentially, this is to provide an allocation in the budget of $50,000 to allow for front boundary fencing to be installed, to establish essentially an entrance point to that site, where at the moment it's used basically for a staff car park, and so you've got parents trying to get toddlers and kids out of the kindergarten and the child facility, a very abrupt entrance, and then of course vehicles coming on and off the entrance there. This would simply provide some calming to that front entrance, a safer outcome, very consistent with what we have in all of our other kindergarten facilities. Unfortunately, we've converted something which was not fit for purpose, I think, in terms of how it's used, and this would provide that sort of safety and amenity that I think parents on both sides of Dundas Street who use the facility would want to see. So I'll end it there. I think it's pretty straightforward, and I think in terms of the longer term outcome, it would be an improvement to the facility, and of course a big safety improvement for people that are struggling with more than one child, essentially stepping out almost onto a road at the moment.
Thank you,
Just a question, please, Mr. Mayor, if I may. Just to confirm, it is a council kindergarten?
Facility, yeah.
And can I just ask, maybe through you, Mr. Mayor, if there are some safety concerns there, Why hasn't this work been done?
Well,
as,
actually, we
as
had
a matter of course?
a comment from the officers circulated today, so maybe, Katrina, can just expand?
Through Mr Mayor, works have been, we've had the site investigated. It does actually meet all safety regulations at this stage. Some of the issues with it is because it's so close to the boundary line that makes them work restrictive. So we've done some work with officers and established that it's about $100,000 worth of works to do anything considerable to the front of the building.
But it meets safety
But it
standards.
doesn't meet regulations.
Okay. Councillor Curtis, quickly.
I saw during the course of the afternoon, Mr Mayor, and I'm hoping for your guidance to get some clarification. The onus on those moving amendments were also to demonstrate where savings were to occur.
Yeah.
So if I can ask, I suppose, Councillor McCarthy, is this replacing a $10,000 item that's already in the budget, or new spending?
Was it borrowing?
No, as per all the previous items, well, some of the previous items, including Councillor Lawrence's, my reference was that it's a small amount, it can be easily soaked up by the existing surplus, and I've checked that with the officers, and it can be well accounted for within the existing surplus that's available. It's very similar to Councillor Lawrence's item earlier that made reference to being able to be accommodated within the existing surplus.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that, because Mr Cochran indicated we've got a surplus of 50,000.
That's right.
No, that's a surplus. That's a surplus for the subsequent year. The surplus for this year is beyond that.
So the question remains, Mr Mayor, if I can get an officer.
Yeah, can we have a comment there from the officer, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So it can be accommodated within this year's surplus.
Okay, thank you. I'll put that item to a vote. All those in favour?
I think there are secondaries in time.
Do you want to speak? Speak, Councillor Walsh. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Well, this is it's obviously a relatively small amount, but given it's a safety issue, and it seems that it would make a difference to many parents and kids who attend the Thornbury Kindergarten.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I'll put that item to a vote. All those in favour? That item. Those against? That item is carried to be included into the budget. All those in favour, please stand. I name Councillor Villala, Councillor Gregor, Councillor Walsh, Fontana, Cedars, Williams, McCarthy, Lee. Councillor Lawrence against. And would have appreciated if councillors were on time for the briefing, so I would have explained the process for this evening's meeting. Thank you, councillors. Next item, Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you. Very straightforward. Essentially, to include an additional $32,000 to expand the Active Spaces program and expand its reach.
I'm happy to second that.
Councillor Greco. Councillor
very quickly, councillors would be well acquainted with this program. It's been immensely successful. It's won council various awards. It is run, I think, very efficiently, but the potential for it to continue its good work, particularly in the northern parts of Darebin, is there. In the submissions, the comment from officers was a line item of $32,000, which could be added to expand the capacity. That would, of course, enable further work to occur, particularly in areas and shopping strips in Reservoir and elsewhere, where we do have vacancy rates in some shopping strips. That can be turned around. The benefit, of course, is not just to the existing traders, but to the community and those tenants. So I'll end it there. I think it's every dollar we put into this program brings back multiple dollars in social and economic return. So,
can I ask where this money is coming from?
Once again, in relation to, as per the email and as per Mr Cochran's comments earlier, the surplus that we currently have can actually accommodate these requests, and I'd be happy to.
I'd rather hear it from the officer.
Can I ask another question through you, Mr Mayor? How much is actually in this surplus if we're all going to start doing amendments and?
Well,
Mr. Dev? Cochran, if you can provide the long-term effect as well, please, and what we do today, and what's surplus. There is enough surplus to cover the amendments coming in. Mr. Cochran is reminding councillors. Mr. Cochran is reminding councillors that any expenditure over and above what we have provided will have an effect in the future.
What's the total figure? I need a figure.
10 million today, roughly. And in 3 years, 10 million surplus this year.
Of 10 million.
Projected. And there is 53,000 as a result in 3 years' time. So
Thank
it
you.
will eat into the future as well.
Yes, it
Okay.
does.
It's not one.
Councillor Lee.
Just a quick calculation. From what I've seen so far, we've added $152,000 extra to the budget without any savings so far.
152.
152 without any savings identified so far. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But just to confirm, $10 million surplus.
Yeah, but if you look at in 3 years' time, that won't be 10 million. That will
Yeah,
be
but we're looking at this point in time. Yeah, but this point in time,
Councillors,
it's
we've
10
had
million.
these briefings in relation to operating budgets and so on. We should know what figures
Yeah,
we should
10
be
million.
calculating.
This point in time.
Okay.
I've just got a question on this amendment.
Question?
I'm just wondering why the 32,000 is using the word particularly, why it isn't just 32,000 for the northern parts of Darebin.
We can have that item omitted, removed, just increase the 32,000 to the program.
Well, I think the emphasis in the submission was actually about increasing the capacity of the program in the northern parts of Darebin, but it's to increase the capacity of the program more generally as well. So if Councillor Lawrence would like the removal of the word particularly, I have no objection to that. I think the emphasis is quite clear where the additional need now is in relation to the program.
Okay. So we'll remove, particularly in the northern part of Darebin, that item, that last bit can be removed. I'll put that item to
So what's been said?
particularly in the northern part of
No,
Darebin.
Mr Mayor, my question was just about the word particularly, which is a weasel word.
Well, we'll remove the word particularly then.
I would.
I've already removed the word particularly, so we moved on, haven't we?
Yeah, because the way I read it is, it's, you know, it might not be, it might be. So I
out.
think,
It's out.
thank
Yep.
you,
It's
I
out.
think there has to be some certainty that it
Let's
will
keep
go to the
moving.
north.
Is there any further comments? I'll put that item
No, I was
to Councillor Greco.
Yeah, look, so we're moving this, just understand, with the word particularly gone. Okay.
That's
Look,
gone.
I'm glad that we're keeping this because I think there are areas in the northern end of the city, particularly along Broadway, Edward Street, there's the Brotherhood shopping precinct. There's lots of little shopping precincts where a project like this is waiting to happen. And in terms of actually revitalising those particular areas. So I'm really happy that, you know, $32,000 is a very modest amount to increase the economic activity of very, very small shopping villages and shopping precincts in the northern part of the city.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. I'll put that item to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. So that item gets included into the budget. Next item we're looking at is the 35,000 mark.
That's,
I think
that's redundant
scrapped.
now.
That's redundant, so we
remove that one.
Omit that. Next item, Councillor McCarthy.
Yes, it's to include a sum of 50,000 for master plans for Mayor Park and Penders Park. It's not appearing on screen there at the moment, but, so they're two separate items. So that should just be. So the second one. So it's just there we go. 50,000 for master plans for Mayor Park and Penders Park. So if there's a seconder.
Yep.
So I've been informed we've actually got master plans in place for these parks.
No, we don't.
Not for May Park.
And not for.
Okay. Second to Councillor Walsh. Councillor McCarthy.
So we don't have master plans for Penders Park or Mayor Park. Okay.
So,
seconded.
So thank you, Councillor Walsh. So, Councillor.
Just, Mr Mayor, I just have to declare an interest.
You live near
Mayor
Mayor's
Park.
All right, an interest. You can sit down. It's an interest. Yep.
Okay.
Continue, please.
Family member.
That's okay. Just an interest. Keep going.
So, councillors may recall, in last year, council moved a motion calling for the development of the master plan for Mayor Park. I believe that some initial thinking has been done around that work, but the actual process of the master plan hasn't actually been undertaken. This park has increased significantly in its value and use by local residents, and is increasingly becoming a bit of a regional park in terms of it is the #1 piece of open space for a whole range of residents along that whole section along the Mary Creek corridor there. And it's really the only open space for some of those residents in Northcote, north of Atherton Road there, so of any significance. So there is a strong desire from the community to see some improvement to the park, of obviously the introduction of a playground, some safety fencing, and a few other opportunities there as well. Likewise at Penders Park, there are a number of residents already who are seeking for council to bring forward the redevelopment of play space and also some all abilities play space there in the park. It is a really important park in terms of where its location is. It serves both the South Preston area and of course also the East Thornbury area, and of course it serves a big purpose at the moment because it has a mixture of the environmental amenity but also the play space. It is on our schedule for works but not for a number of years. The proposal here is to do the master planning work sooner rather than later, and the benefits of actually looking at these two parks, which are at an equivalent point in the horizon, both close to, of course, the Rucker and Kazali wards. They're both in the Rucker ward, but I'm bordering those two, serving particular communities on either side.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Time.
Okay. I just got a question. Again, could this $50,000 could this come from the reserve that we have, rather than just as a line item? And also, could you please explain, for the benefit of councillors and the gallery, what the impact on the surplus and the underlying surplus would be if the money was to be taken from the reserve?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry?
No.
Okay, great. That's all we need to know. Thank you.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor. My park is a range of users. Penders Park, could someone refresh my memory? I thought we had spent quite a lot of money in the last decade there, including detailed master plans.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. We have spent money in the big. I don't have the details. We have spent money, including a half court for the recent park.
Councillor Vallola.
Mr. Mayor, in light of that information, I mean, I'm happy if there's no master plan and there was a report, that came to council regarding Mayor Park, but I don't know anything about Penders Park. So I feel uncomfortable, including Penders Park. So,
can I assist councillors who might not be familiar with what's actually taking place at Penders Park? Is that part of the proposal is actually to see an increase in
Councillor McCarthy, so
all abilities play space.
Yeah. That's earmarked for a range of.
So it is earmarked for works.
Yeah, there's lots of other.
Thanks, Councillor McCarthy.
I appreciate Councillor McCarthy, but there's lots of other open space areas that are earmarked for work, and we haven't got the rate in here in front of us.
I'm going to put that item to a vote, councillors. All those in favour? Those against? That's lost, councillors.
I'll call a division on that.
All those in favour, please stand. I name Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Gregor, Councillor Walsh. All those against, please stand. I name Councillor Lee, Williams, Fontana, Cedas, Lawrence and Vallola. Next item there, Councillor McCarthy.
The next one is to include $30,000 for a Darebin Open Air Cinema initiative, with multiple events to be delivered in each ward in partnership with local sports clubs, community organisations as part of council-run festivals such as True North.
I've just got a question. I understand that in the budget there's $70,000 which has been allocated for local art events. Do those local art events actually take into account these or not?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, my understanding is that anything that was covered under the True North student funding. I'm actually not clear on the numbers there. I don't believe so. I don't believe the note.
In terms of
my understanding is the True North is covered. Covered the cinema last time.
Do you want to explain that? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that the Mayor Park funding could be covered by the Leisure Grants Program, so they can apply for funding there.
Okay. So, with respect, the Leisure Grants funding program, when does that become available?
When does that become available?
It's usually around September. It's up to the government to. It's external funding, but our funding is after the budget. We will determine that soon after budget.
So the proposal's there. It's up to councillors if they want to vote for it or not.
Okay.
If there's a seconder, I don't know if there's a seconder yet.
Yeah. There's Councillor Walsh. He's seconded. Okay. I won't go into any more debate. I'll put that item to vote. All those in favour? Those against? that item is lost.
I'll call a division.
All those in favour, please stand. I name Councillor McCarthy, Greco, Walsh and Lawrence. Those against, please stand. I name Councillor Villala, Fontana, Cetus, Williams and Lee. Thank you, councillors. That concludes your items tonight, Councillor.
That's correct.
Your amendments. Thank you very much. The next item, next councillor with amendments is Councillor Williams.
Mr Mayor, why is that on there?
Oh, that needs to come off.
That's
That'll come off. Members of Galloway, currently doing our budget planning will start at the conclusion of this meeting. We may go over time. You just bear with us. So we now have amendments from Councillor Williams. The item in blue.
Yep. I would like to propose the increase of $100,000 towards safety at Queen Street and Reservoir.
Seconder. Councillor Lee. Councillor Williams.
The money will come out of our traffic management area, and it's pretty straightforward. It's mainly due to the safety. Queen Street has triple the amount of daily traffic travelling along compared to other nearby streets as Northern Hay, Southern Hay, Tyler Street. It's an area where there's nearby schools, where peak hour times between 8 and 9 in the morning and 3 and 5 in the afternoon is the most peaking time for travelling for both pedestrians and vehicles in this particular street. As I said, it's the only street that doesn't have any traffic calming measures as opposed to all the other streets nearby. But it's also a street that's between High Street and Plenty Road, so we seem to get a lot of traffic that uses it as a shortcut that access into Plenty Road. So I just thought it would be a great idea that considering all the nearby streets in that grid area all have calming measures except for Queen Street. So it'd be only appropriate and no-brainer that we also do some sort of calming measures for this particular street too.
Councillor Villa.
Just a question through you, Mr Mayor, to the officers. Has Queen Street been identified as a high priority in terms of safety initiatives?
It is. We have. Yeah.
Can I just, if I can ask a subsequent question, if it has been identified as a high priority, wouldn't it then be picked up through the actual planning process, which the this fund of $1.5 million per annum traffic management planning is supposed to identify that on a technical level anyway? I'm just conscious that we don't want to undermine the value of that actual precinct-based planning approach.
I understand it's already included.
Correct, it's part of the 1.5 million, but this puts a priority on that, which there's no council decision on that in the past. So 1.5.
Well, the traffic engineers can prioritise it, so we don't actually move it tonight, do we? Councillor Williams, you want to withdraw that? It's already included in a priority program, I understand now?
I was, after speaking to officers, I was told it wasn't included and it needed an extra $100,000 to ensure that things like the 40k kilometre speed limit was put in place and no right-hand turn, and putting other extra items in place, such as the flat speed platforms in that area.
Councillor Vella.
Mr Mayor, I'm going to speak against it. I just, because we have a road safety...
Councillor, sorry. Second hasn't spoken yet, so...
I've
sorry.
got a quick question. Yes, I do. The way it currently reads is that 100,000 is included in the 1.5. Can I just get clarification? This is included in 1.5, not addition to the 1.5?
It is, as the resolution says here, it's within the 1.5 million.
Within,
Yeah,
so it's included.
So it's budget neutral.
All it does is brings up as a priority item, so we'll be dealing with that first.
So we're not adding extra 100,000.
We're not adding
We're just
100,000.
prioritising the
We're
product.
just
Very simple.
Mr Mayor, I sort of speak against it because I trust the officers in the road safety area to identify the most in urgent need of attention in regards to road safety. So I don't know where the Queen Street fits in, in terms of priority. Haven't seen a report. So I'm at this stage don't want to insist because it really depends on what the officers' recommendations are in relation to prioritising road safety across all of Darebin.
I'll put that item to a vote, councillors. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. It's been included into the budget. Any other items there from Councillor Williams? The next item?
Happy to second that.
Councillor McCarthy seconded. Just quickly, briefly, I'll go straight to a vote after you speak.
Okay, so this is allocating money towards the pet voucher program for $20,000 into our budget to ensure that the rescue groups are adequately funded for the majority of the year. I've spoken to officers and the additional money would come from the savings achieved throughout the year determined through mid-budget review and the increase in revenue from animal management breaches and animal registration revenue budget. So it will come out from that. Now, in reference to why we do this, because I know some councillors are pretty much against this, I believe that Darebin is a place where is a place to live. So it's livable for those who obviously seem to be very verbal, but what about those who are not verbal, including our non-verbal people and humans and animals that live in our community also. I think it's really important that we do look at how we... Sorry, Councillor Walsh.
Continue, Williams, please.
We do have an increasing epidemic problem in our growing community of cats, and it's important that we need to look after those who are having trouble looking after their own animals, who have mental health, elderly, who find it difficult in desexing their cats. We do have an increasing issue where cats are going to nearby neighbours and spraying on their verandas, garden beds, and killing native birds and destroying endangered habitats of native birds and animals. And it is this reason that I hope the council would consider putting the appropriate amount in the budget to help our community and animals to have better protection. In doing so, that this council also considers that the whole of the community and not just the ones that are mostly vocal.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. I'm going to put that item straight to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? Those against again, please? Yep. That item's carried. It's been included into the budget.
Can I call a division, please?
All those in favour, please stand. Oh, hang on. I thought I saw 5. I name Councillor Williams, McCarthy, Villela, Greco and Lawrence in favour. Those against, Councillor Lee, Fontana, Cetus and Walsh. Next item, Councillor Williams.
I'm seeking an extra additional $15,000 to subsidise for a van for desexing.
Second that one.
Second, Councillor McCarthy.
That will go into areas for those that are quite an issue, and we'll go on what's called like a speed, similar to a speed dating, where we'll go around and do the van goes around and does the speed desexing of our animals. And once again, the money will come out of our revenue and animal management and breaches from animal registration and revenue budget.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Just a quick question, Mr. Mayor. This, like the previous item, I'm assuming is not affecting the surplus, it's through savings and operations?
Correct.
That's what's been said. So, yeah, I'll put that on to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? That item is carried.
Can I call a division, please?
All those in favour of the item, please stand. I name Councillor McCarthy, Williams, Fontana, Lawrence and Villela. Those against, Councillor Lee, Cetus, Walsh and Greco. Thank you, councillors. Next item, Councillor Williams. Do you have any more items?
No, withdraw the last
one. That's withdrawn.
one.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Final councillor for amendments to the budget is Councillor Greco.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, just in relation to mine, if I could have some attention from councillors.
Yes.
Yeah. Just in relation to mine, before I the clock starts ticking, I have quite a few amendments there, but as you could, with all those, they actually cost neutral. And actually, there should be one little adjustment.
Can I
there.
have someone move one per one as we explained, Councillor Greco?
Yeah, but I just wanted to make the point at the outset.
One per one, please, Councillor.
Yeah, no, but Mr. Mayor, I just want to make the point at the outset that all the items will be cost neutral to council.
No, not this
because
stage.
I put the motion as one motion because all the items are basically cost neutral. Yeah.
Start the clock.
I have a second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, this one here.
So you're moving the whole lot as one. You don't want to go line by line because you said they're cost neutral. That's what you just said.
I'll speak to one at a time.
Well, that's what we agreed to before, so it makes it easier. So we'll do the first one.
Mr. Mayor, if I'm correct, if Councillor Greco would like to have them all
that's what I asked.
Together, I think that's the proposal. If they're all to be considered together, they're a package.
Okay, we'll save time and
do the whole lot. Can we have them all on the screen, please, for the members, benefit of the gallery?
I'm happy to second the whole lot, Mr. Mayor, because I've got
Councillor Greco.
Okay, look, I think I need to make one small adjustment, or if it has already been made, I'm not sure. With the removal of $35,000 which has already been included in the budget. That's gone out. That's great. So just at the outset, I need to say that this is not only cost neutral, it actually saves the council $35,000 because one of the items that I had on there was actually already included in the budget. So there is actual saving of $35,000. What this does is basically, you can see the items there. One is the, in relation to the Merrylands Community Centre to have the 3 portables. We had a presentation here. I think that the demand there is quite obvious, and it actually benefits lower socioeconomic groups. Also to include $20,000, I think we can remove that, Mr Mayor, because we've also, through Councillor Lawrence's motion, I understand Councillor Lawrence wants to go into that, so we can remove that. So now the actual saving to council will be $55,000 if all this is approved. The third item there is the removal of $225,000 for the Preston Police Station, the demolition of that. Look, we haven't got any immediate plans for that. There is some talk about doing something there, but we don't know when that will actually eventuate. So rather than knocking something down, when we actually could do something with that money. The same applies with the Preston RSL, $150,000. And rather than using money to demolish something, we actually could do something with that money. And the things that we could do with that money is that is in relation to having those 3 portables there at the Merrylands Centre. I'll go to point number 5, which is to reduce by $20,000 the office accommodation for City Council, and that's to and that's in relation to $100,000 is spent, just to reduce that by $20,000. Also to reduce the car fleet by $85,000. We already spent quite a bit on our car fleet.
Time, Councillor.
And I'll just get, if I can just...
No, Councillor. They've had your time.
Just the last 2 items.
Councillor Greco. No, that's all we have time.
We can cut $25,000.
Councillor Greco. Councillor
And in
Greco.
relation to industrial relations lawyers, we can cut $25,000.
Thank you. We've gone over time. Councillor Villallo, seconder. But there will be officer comment as a relation to this before I go to a vote. I'll make that very clear. Members of the gallery, thanks for joining us. We're currently doing our budget. I do apologise. There will be a delay in the commencement of planning. You're more than welcome to stay and observe the budget, or you can wait outside quietly. If you've got your mobile phones, please switch them off and put them on silent. Councillor Villallo, second.
Look, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be very quick. I think item number 1 is absolutely critical. We've got a very detailed presentation here from the Merrylands Community Centre. They do an outstanding job, and I think it's absolutely imperative that we support their project, because they actually add value to community services. We have got a fairly healthy surplus, and they have got, let's not forget, based on additional space via portables, they have actually got about $500,000 funding from the state government to run programs. So they have done the hard yards. They've actually got the funding, the bodies to go. They just need the portables. And they are the #1 private providers in Darebin for these programs. There are lots of dodgy ones, but they're actually outstanding, and they've got a lot of acknowledgement from the state government for the work that they do. I think it's absolutely critical that we support the Merrylands Community Centre, and also the funding for the chairs for the elderly at the Merrylands Community Centre. Is that there? That's already included. So now Councillor Greco has done some diligent work there in identifying maybe a little bit of fat in the budget, maybe areas that we haven't looked at, but I really welcome the forensic approach to maybe skimming some of the fat that's in the budget, i.e., I think it was, how much was it for professional development?
$700,000.
An increase of $100,000 for professional development. That sounds a lot. So thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Thank
you, Councillor Villallo. Can I make some clarity about that? We're actually touching on operational items here, which I think we technically can't do. And anyway, officer comment before I go to questions.
Councillors, officers have written to councillors privately about it. Now publicly it's been brought in, so I need to make some comments, and if I can't get all the details, CFO may help me. Just to go through some items. First item, $475,000 to Preston Reservoir adult education people. They have made a submission to the budget. That's the first thing we have heard, and I do not know what they will be using. If council wants to allocate money for a service like that, they need to look at it. Otherwise, it's purely a community grant. You need to be careful. And the other issue with that is, the first one is 475,000 for a capital. The rest is all come from operations. There are two different issues. You cannot equate to each other, because if you don't do the operation, you will do it later. You have to do it. That liability will be there. One issue. But apart from that, as we have explained, they are treated differently in the budget. Now go back to the item, remove 225,000 funding for demolition. As we have said, we have been in discussion with the community radio. They are bringing in $1 million and then using that and renting it out property. So if you don't demolish part of it, it will be troublesome, meaning that that particular project need to be postponed, contrary to what our discussions are in the budget in the past. 150,000 funding for demolition of Preston RSL. Yeah, we have some ongoing issues with that, particularly the pigeon infestation. We would like to remove as early as possible. If you postpone it, that's independent of that, that need to be looked at. Reducing funding for 20,000 for office accommodation, where in an organization with 1,300 staff, that's an operational. Council cannot deal with that because we have worked it out. It's 80,000. It's a very small proportion of the building space that we have. It constantly goes through changes for occupational health and safety and accommodating staff. I'll go to the next one. Reduce project cost by 85,000 for vehicular plant replacement. Really, sort of 3 million, brought it down to 1.7 million. That is related to plant and equipment which runs the operations. We cannot do it on the go like that. Reduce funding by 25,000 professional development. Again, we did provide it as a percentage of expenditure on staff. It was all centralized, that's why you are seeing it. It was really brought down to half the previous expenditure, and it's a very small proportion. In the industry standard is 4% of the staff cost, but it's less than a percentage we spent. And again, operational. And reduce funding by 25,000 professional development we were talking. Industrial relations, yes, we are launching into a EBA next year, new EBA, and council did resolve and discuss that staff salary increases at the moment have to be re-looked at for the new EBA, so we might not be able to deal with that. That's again operation. So here we have a ideal example of operation and capital looked at together by council. Independent of that, you have to deal with each one of them. It's not equating each other.
Okay, councillors, I thank the CEO for his comments there. I actually need a motion to adjourn this meeting so we can actually commence planning. It's a process for our local law, so I actually need to now adjourn this. Move someone to move and second and vote.
So if I'm correct, we adjourn the budget meeting to continue on after the planning committee meeting.
No, adjourn so we can commence planning and then adjourn planning and go back to budget.
Oh, I see what you mean.
I'll move in that direction. That's fine.
Yes. So our Councillor McCarthy moved to adjourn. Councillor Lee second. All those in favour? This meeting is now adjourned. Members of the government, we do apologise. We've had a budget meeting commencing at 6. It's actually gone into overtime. Planning is meant to commence at 7. We're past 7. We now need to commence planning and adjourn that. I beg your pardon. But we must commence planning before 7:30. But we must also finish our budget meeting. Okay.
Understood.
So thanks, councillors. So we've moved to adjourn. Now we go straight to planning. So members of the gallery, if you can just bear with us. Planning is now commenced. We've now commenced our planning meeting because it's past the statutory commencement time.
I now move an adjournment motion to adjourn the planning meeting.
Second to Councillor Williams. All those in favour? That's carried. We've now moved to adjourn that meeting. Thank you.
And now do we need to resume the budget meeting? Do we need a motion for that?
Yes.
Yes, we do. I'll move a motion to resume the budget meeting.
Second to Councillor Seves. All those in favour? Councillor. Members of the Gallery, I will explain. What we've actually just done is commence the planning meeting, but we've had to adjourn it so we can finish our budget. Our budget is fairly critical tonight. We've got to 7:30 to commence our planning. We do apologise. It's taken longer than we anticipated, but we will finish very shortly, okay? Thank you for your patience. Now, we've just had a briefing from the CEO in relation to those matters raised by Councillor Greco. Do we have any questions?
I would just, not so much a question, but to support Councillor Greco's amendment, and also whilst taking on board the comments from the CEO, which I take in point, the amounts that Councillor Greco has identified are across a range of areas, and I think he's done an enormous amount of work to try to find efficiencies and savings where he can. I would like to think that in the spirit of the project that was presented to Council in relation to the Marylands Community Centre, which, if you equate the number of people that it will actually benefit, their figures were somewhere between 200 and 250 people per annum over a 5-year period. We're talking about potentially about 1,000 people. Now, that kind of capital works project rarely has that level of life-changing impact on potentially about 1,000 people. And when I say people, we're talking about young people who have disengaged from school, are in VCAL programs, often young people that have been fallen in trouble with the law, and this is their pathway back into employment and education. If they don't provide this service, which they have funding for, they don't have a facility for it at the moment, if they don't provide this service, then that service will not be provided in that area, which means that those young people that we're talking about that would benefit from this project will not be able to access that service in the reservoir area. So that's really what the project's about, and I think we need to keep in mind, in the balance of priorities, we're talking about getting 3 portables in place so that that $500,000 of program funding can actually roll out in reservoir, or not. And that's what's before us. I would like to think that even though there's some operational savings that Councillor Greco has identified, that our management will be able to find for those particular items, 25,000 here or there, we'll be able to find those sorts of efficiencies in the day-to-day budget process. So I'm not too worried about some of those lower points, because I think that some smart management will get us through on those fronts. But I think we would, it would be greatly remiss if we didn't take up this opportunity to actually get a program that's going to be life-changing for potentially 200 or to 250 young people per annum through that VCAL program. So I think we just need to keep in mind what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Lawrence?
Just got a question. In relation to 225, in terms of not demolishing...
Can you speak up, Councillor?
In relation to $225,000 for the demolition job, and also another one for $150,000, are they operational or capital in nature?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They're operational expenditure.
I have a proposal, an amendment to remove...
Just a supplementary question on those, because they're identified as potential savings. There was an officer report that there would be $15,000 required for maintenance of the former RSL. If the other building is not demolished, are there any operational costs for the next 12 months in holding that building?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's about equivalent costings.
About equivalent.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Councillor Lee?
get some clarification on that point.
There are operational costs. Can we hear that answer again, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, there are operational costs of around $15,000 for the former Preston Police Station.
Councillor Lee, question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just want to ask whether we have any agreement or contract in place for either the demolition or the new tenant, potential new tenant, and if so, what are our legal implications for that?
Katrina, could you please explain? We brought it to the briefing meeting.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. We have had interest from a group from 3KD for the taking possession of the Preston Police Station. If we were to move them into the area, there are demolition works that need to be done in that facility. They are seeking to move it. They are being forced to move out of their accommodation where they are now, and the state has guaranteed funding to relocating them to access. We do not have any formal agreement with them at the moment, but we are working towards that.
Any further questions?
Mr. Mayor, just for as a point of clarification, if it makes it much easier for councillors, I'm happy to remove from point 3 to point 8 from this. I put those in there again because I've identified some fat in the organisation, so I put those for some efficiency.
I asked for questions.
Yeah, I'm just putting forward, Mr. Mayor, a proposal where we just consider, if councillors feel more comfortable with that, just item 1 on its own.
As a seconder, I would welcome that.
Procedurally, Mr. Mayor, if I'm correct from the standing orders, we can move to split the motion and split point 1 from the remaining points and vote on them separately. I will procedurally move in that direction to keep us moving.
Yep.
It's not what you asked for. I asked at the start of the meeting, but before the item came up, we'll do them individually, and you've just gone against that, so we've wasted more time as a result. So you're withdrawing which points, Councillor Greco?
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to follow the suggestion that's put forward by Councillor McCarthy, where we split the motion, where we consider the first item on its own, and then we'll consider the others.
I think that's very reasonable.
No, I'm not accepting that.
So, Mr. Mayor, it's a procedural. I've moved that point 1 be heard on its own, that it be split.
Councillor McCarthy, I said at the commencement of Councillor Greco's motions to have each one. I'm speaking. You'll speak in a moment. I'll give you a moment. To have each one done individually. We've now gone about the wrong way. We've spent 15 minutes doing this. We made the rules pretty clear.
As a point of order, look, I think we have a procedural motion that enables us to split this in order to move this on fairly quickly, rather than having to and fro-in. Let's see what the will of the council is in relation to this, so we can expedite with this, so we can get along.
I gave you the option at the start, Councillor Greco.
Mr. Mayor, at the beginning of the meeting, I also expressed to you the best way to handle these things, and I was in two minds about it. And
you decided to do the whole lot rather than wasting more time.
We have a way forward. Councillor McCarthy has put. It's a very simple procedural way forward, and this could be over in a matter of minutes if we just proceed.
Yeah,
let's do that then.
Thank
you. So we're doing item 1, moving item 3 to 8. Yes. Is that what you said, Councillor McCarthy? Yes.
Just to split the motion and vote on item 1.
Item 1. Okay. Item 1. Council, I'll put the motion for item 1. All those in favour? Those against? That item is included in the budget.
Thank Christ. Could I call for a division?
All those in favour, please stand. I name Councillor Lee, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Bilella, Councillor Greco, Councillor Lawrence. Those against, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Fontana, Councillor Williams, Councillor Cetus. We now move all the other ones together, item 2 to item 8. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? Those items have been excluded. That concludes your amendments, Councillor Greco. Division. All those in favour, please stand. I name Councillor Villela, Councillor Greco, Councillor Walsh. All those against? Councillor Lee, McCarthy, Williams, Cetus, Fontana and Lawrence. That concludes the amendments. We have about 15 minutes to go, councillors. We have now moved with Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Villela seconder. The main body.
My amendments.
I haven't seen your amendment.
Yes, I did send them through.
Where are they?
I did send them through by email, and besides, if you
where are they, Council?
If you look at the local laws, I'm entitled to move them on the night.
That's it. You got it. You got 12 minutes, Council. If you have a seconder, we can move on with them.
It's simply that that the money for community consultation, grade separation community consultation, be removed, which is $80,000. Be removed from the budget.
Is there a seconder?
I haven't seen it.
If there's no seconder, that lapses, Councillor Walsh.
Okay.
No, there's no seconder. That's lapsed. Is there a seconder? I can't see a seconder. That item's lapsed.
Okay, and I've got another amendment.
Let's hear it.
To include $20,000 for promotional events for the Thornbury Traders Association.
Happy to second that, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Walsh.
Can we just get a question, just so we don't waste our time?
Yeah.
Is this already covered by the Economic Development Unit?
Is it covered, Mr. Deb?
No.
Sorry, yeah.
Can we hear it again, Councillor Walsh?
I've got some wording here.
We want to hear the actual motion.
I propose that $20,000 be allocated to undertaking marketing, promotional events for the Thornbury Traders, business development and business development to consult with business groups in the area to come up with appropriate events that suit their precinct.
Mr. Mayor, no, it's not in the budget, but normally we do that through the special rate scheme.
Point of order. After when I just through you, Mr. Mayor, when I discussed it with Mr. Boscario, he said it would not be included in the special rates.
Do we have a seconder for that item?
I second that.
Okay, I'm going to go straight to a vote on that.
I
I haven't got time. No, I haven't got time, Councillor Lawrence. We have not got time. We've got to speak to the budget too.
Yeah,
I'm going to go straight. That's fine. That's
information
fine. They should have been supplied to us when I asked councillors numerous times last week. Get these in early, not at 6 o'clock at the commencement of the meeting. Numerous times I've reminded councillors. I hate to harbour on that, but it frustrates me. It really does. We've been doing this for 3.5 years. I've been doing this for 18 years. Anyway, I'm going to put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? That item is lost.
Core division.
All those in favour, please stand up. I name Councillor Walsh, Councillor Lawrence. Those against, please stand up. I name Councillor Villela, Greco, Fontana, Williams, McCarthy and Lee. Councillor Seeders is absent. As there are no other items, we have now moved the budget with those inclusions, moved by Councillor McCarthy at the commencement of the meeting at 6 o'clock, seconded Councillor Villela with all those additional items. Councillors, we've got about 10 minutes to... Councillor want to speak to it.
Are we voting on the budget at the moment?
Yeah.
We can just vote on it.
I just would say, just as the mover, I just would like to thank our officers and the community submitters who took the time. I think from memory it was a record number of submissions to this budget process. I don't believe there's been a time when we've had, in fact, so many, and it was quite incredible to have that level of response, so that was great to see. I would thank the officers from the top of the organisation down for all their work that's gone into the budget. We've been fiddling around the edges tonight in terms of the final details, but it is a huge piece of work, and particularly in a rate capping environment, trying to maintain maximum retention of employment and services at the same time as trying to get a budget that balances. The council does end its term in terms of its final budget with this budget going into the changeover period in October. With a healthy financial position, but there are big challenges ahead in terms of investment in infrastructure. And I will just make the point that I think the council is the next council is going to have to keep a keen eye on how to continue to meet the strong and realistic and reasonable expectations of our community in terms of equity, infrastructure, good services, and of course creating employment opportunities for local people wherever we can, whilst at the same time meeting our financial obligations and not allowing rates to increase beyond what is appropriate in the minds of the community. So I'll end it there. I think it's been a big night in terms of the budget. I apologise to the members of the public that have come for the planning committee to have to sit through the final throes of the budget process, but it's a significant piece and we need to get it right. And I'll just once again thank councillors but also officers in the community for all their work, and particularly our CFO, Mr Alan Cochrane, for all his work, particularly at the last minute in accommodating councillors' requests. So thank you, Alan.
Here.
Thanks.
Here.
Okay. Just briefly.
Yes, very, very briefly. I, of course, want to reiterate or support everything that Councillor McCarthy said in his thank yous and acknowledgements of those who have contributed in getting the budget done. It's a big job. Going forward, Mr Mayor, I think as our last budget, we leave council in a good financial, healthy state. But as Councillor McCarthy said, there are lots of challenges ahead. I think it's absolutely critical that with rate capping, that the community engages in the whole budget process, not 1 month before the budget, but maybe starting as soon as possible. In terms of our communication with the community must be a priority throughout the year so that the community is on board and aware of all the challenges that we face on their behalf. So I think that it's imperative that that community engagement starts as soon as we can with the various tools that are available to us, so that the community is alongside us, the new council, when the big challenges come into play. I don't think the community is yet fully aware of the 2.5% rate capping and the implication of that. So I'll leave it on that, Mr Mayor, but thank you to everyone, thanks for the officers, and I'm quite happy and quite proud of where we're at with the budget in terms of maintaining our community services. Thank you.
I'm actually going to speak against the budget, Mr Mayor, and I do so very, very reluctantly. I think we actually failed our residents in this budget because we wasted an opportunity to address some of the fundamental structural issues in our budget. Let's be very clear. I first called for a long-term financial plan for this council almost 3 years ago. I also called for consistently to address our asset renewal gap. Other councillors asked for ways to address the underperforming assets in our organisation. We know that rate capping was coming as soon as the government came into power last year, and yet we were caught short of not addressing the budget fundamentals until very late in the budget process. I agree we have many residents coming to making submissions to the council, but I think that is a failure for us to engage the residents right from the word go. We should have addressed some of those issues back in February as soon as this council resumed from the break. We failed in that. We should have made some tough, difficult decisions on our underperforming assets, how to get our asset renewal punched down so we can free up cash to do all the things that residents want to do. We failed to do that. So this is not a difficult budget, this is a lazy budget. This budget pretends that everything was business as usual when the world has changed, the game has changed since the introduction of rate capping. I'm sorry to say that, but we have let our residents down through this lazy budget. I'm not voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. You're entitled to that. Look, I'm conscious of the time. We need to start planning. One minute comment. Councillor Greco. We've got one minute to do. Quickly.
Look, I'm speaking in favour of the budget, but I understand where Councillor Lee is coming from, because the amendments that I had put up, there could have been a further $530,000 savings that we could have introduced into this budget, because I also agree that whilst I'm in favour of the budget as a whole, I think that there are some items in the budget there that could have been trimmed back for the benefit of the community. And I identified those things because I painstakingly went through the budget line by line to draw out things that we don't need to spend money on in relation to the council. We need to spend money in relation to the community, and I drew those out of the those $530,000 worth of savings that I identified. But overall, I must say it's a good budget, and in terms of what it delivers for the community, and that's why I'm supporting. But I acknowledge the points that have been made by Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. If there's no further comment, 1 minute, Councillor Williams, quickly.
Look, Darebin is in a position of long-term financial stability, and look, I believe that we've put a lot of work towards planting trees, cleaning graffiti, improving safety, upgrading streetscapes and small shopping strips and retail centres. The refurnishment of the Preston Shire Town Hall to extend its life, I think we'll also be putting money towards improving road and cycling and safety. We'll also be putting money towards improving accessibility to buildings and footpaths. I want to highlight a few other things that improve open space. We're putting $360,000 towards spending towards the Robertson Reserve, which will include new barbecues, playgrounds, sporting areas. Adams Reserve will get a new upgrade of barbecue and infrastructure. GH Mont will get improvements to the pavilion. HLT Reserve will get lighting upgrade. Sullivan Reserve will get a new synthetic wicket replacement for the new cricket practice net.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. That'll do. Thank you. Sorry to cut you short. I'm conscious of the time. Councillors, I'm going to put Councillor Walsh.
I'm speaking about the budget.
No, I'm not going to take them with speakers. It's 7:25.
Point of order, Mr.
Hurry up, Councillor. Hurry up.
We are entitled to.
But we're also going to result in probably not having planning commence at 7:30. That's the reality. That meeting can lapse. Speak, Councillor.
I'm in two minds about the budget. The budget. I agree with Councillor McCarthy. Because Councillor Lee. I do think we have failed to properly look at the structural elements of the budget, and that have come as a result of vote capping, not through the fault of this council, not through the fault of our residents, but come as a result of a result of vote capping, and we do need to look at that.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'm supporting this the budget because to not support the budget would be not support the funding of council programs.
Okay. I'm going to put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now go to the next item of consideration, 4.3, the Strategic Resource Plan 2015-19, revision following. Move Councillor Cetus, second Councillor Greco. Do you wish to speak, Councillor?
Very briefly. Touched upon these points early on, Mr Mayor, so I won't take too much time, other than to say that essentially it recaps where we have come from and ties up the business before the end of this term of council, but essentially leaves the business unfinished for the next council to resume. But I do draw councillors' attention again to pages 9, 10 and 11, I think, with respect to the borrowing principles. The fact remains that until such time as the strategic justification is made, I think the assumptions that are made there are obviously catered for future flexible approach on the part of the council. But what is important, Mr Mayor, and one can't go past these salient positions that are detailed, in fact, in the second last paragraph on page 11. The contingencies that are going to be before this council into the future are there. And if we don't have the money resting in our reserves in order to take care of those liabilities, then where else are we going to get the money from? Something has to give. So the capacity of the council needs to be tested in terms of meeting those liabilities. But I want to draw your attention,
20 seconds, Councillor,
to page 10. Have a look. Zero deficit for 2015, 2016. And the reason why is because over many years we've championed actually going to this position. Not to allow for a willy-nilly situation where we go back up on tick. We can't live on credit with the rate capping situation as everyone's been talking about. And you know what? The essential services
Thank you, Councillor.
may be the last arbiter on that issue.
Thank you.
I wish to speak in opposition of the SRP, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Lee, quickly please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do wish to speak in opposition of the SRP because, as I said earlier, we have failed the community. I refer councillors to page 14 of the SRP, the tables of all the indicators. While things are rosy for this year, and perhaps next, things are heading towards a downward trajectory, and that is simply because we failed to make the hard decisions early on in our lifetime of this council. What's more damning is on page 16 and 17 of the SRP, where we failed 3 out of the 5 indicators. I'll say again, we failed 3 out of the 5 indicators on our strategic resource plan. For those of you who are not familiar with it, who have not read it, I'll read it out to you. The achievement that we failed, objectives that we failed include achieve a break-even and adjusted underlying surplus result, not achieved. Achieve a balanced budget on a cash basis,
10 seconds,
not achieved. Council's new renewal requirements, not achieved.
Okay.
If you fail 3 out of 5, that's a fail.
Okay, thank you,
and for
Councillor.
that purpose, and for that very measure, I will not support this SRP, just as will not support next year's budget.
I'll put this to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you, councillors. That concludes tonight's budget meeting. Thank you very much. We'll now recommence our planning meeting. Will someone move recommencement of planning? Councillor McCarthy has moved. Councillor Williams has seconded. All those in favour? carried. Thank you, members of the gallery. We will now commence our planning meeting right on 7:30. Another minute later and you will be going home. We'll just wait for our officers to set up. Can we have our officers in here, please, to present? Members of the gallery, I'll just explain how planning works. If I can have your attention, please, make sure your phones are switched off or put on silent. There's no direct dialogue between members of the gallery and council. Each item that's listed will be heard in sequence. There will be speakers who have registered to speak, either the applicant or an objector or a series of objectors. Those people have 5 minutes to present. Officers will present the case. Councillors will then ask questions after presentations from objectors or speakers. Agendas have been circulated. It does not have to go around. Can you please share with someone? We'll just wait for our officers to join us before we commence. They've gone home, have they? They've got a plan better, their planners, haven't they? Over to the officers when you people are ready. We'll now commence the meeting, or recommence the meeting. The membership is as listed. Item 2, do we have any apologies this evening? There are no apologies. Although Councillor Viola is out of the room at the moment. Any disclosure of conflicts of interest, councillors?
No, Mr Mayor.
Mr Mayor.
I have one item which I'll declare a conflict in, and that's item 5.3, an indirect interest, which I'll be vacating the chamber. I actually know the applicant, so I'll be vacating the chamber. That's 5.4. Confirmation of the minutes of the previous planning committee. Could I have someone move those, please? Move, Councillor Seeters. Second, Councillor Lee. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. We now go to item 5, consideration reports. First one being 5.1, application for amending planning permit and ending S173 agreement for 1-999 Helen Street, Northcote. Over to you, Darren.
Mr Mayor, this matter was deferred from a meeting of the 9th of May 2016 and is essentially the same report presented, with the addition of some commentary highlighting that council needs to carefully consider the planning merits of the application. So there's a brief description of the sightings of VCAT cases, just to alert the council's attention before the committee makes a decision on this matter. The matter was deferred from the 9th of May. I've got an application on the proper details of both applications, so I'll be happy to answer any questions as needed.
Thank you, Mr Rudd. Do we have any speakers for this item?
There are no speakers for this item.
Questions from councillors?
Mr Mayor, in the absence of any questions, I'd like to move a motion in opposition.
So, could we hear the motion?
There's a recommendation to support the amended planning permit. You're moving an alternative, a refusal.
Refusal.
If I'm correct, just because I was considering the same, would it be, if I can ask Councillor Seeters, would it be that application be not supported? Is that the correct terms, maybe through the officers?
Yes, Mr Rudd, looks like councillors want some wording in relation to not supporting the application. An alternative wording will be not support. Switch on the spot?
Yes.
I know it has. All right, so
I'll speak to it, Mr Mayor, and very briefly, a lot
secondly,
of
Councillor McCarthy, of course.
A lot of councillors are very familiar with this sorry story. I'll keep my comments very brief because I've been quite elaborate on this over the years, so there's no point in doing so yet again. The basic principle is what I want to talk about. We are sending a very bad signal here if we don't, as a responsible authority, take a stand and tell people that when they exercise their right to actually submit a planning permit on the basis of the existing zoning that their property resides in, or is, I should say, then they need to respect that. Not come back retrospectively, as is the case before us, and seek to subvert what was a proper and orderly authorised zoning in this subject property, to then essentially build on a false premise, and then seek to get retrospective approval from this council. I mean, at some point we've got to draw the line. I would remind councillors that we actually won in the Magistrates' Court against this person for this very principle. Now, I'm unmoved, I'm sorry to say, and I refuse to accept the basis that, you know, the present realities on the ground need to be respected. That's a very bad message, and it sends essentially a green light to anyone else who wants to test the authority of this council that they can and will succeed. I think at some point we need to say no, and I'll leave it there, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McCarthy, do you wish to add?
Councillor Cetus has covered the moral argument. I would just add the technical argument, which is that this is a decision with some discretion available to the Planning Committee. We have a choice as to whether we wish to go down the path as proposed or to take the position that Councillor Cetus has outlined. I'm in support of not supporting the proposal, not just for the grounds that Councillor Cetus has raised, which I think are valid at a moral level and I think in a community leadership level, but I think also at a technical level there. The onus is on the applicant in this case to take their case wherever they wish to, and I think if we don't hold firm in terms of the principle that you cannot build something and get contrary to council's ruling and other levels of government and decision making being VCAT, and then expect to just go ahead and get away with it. So I think that there's a basic technical principle here which needs to be followed. While I appreciate the complexity of these sorts of matters, the fact of the matter is that we need to hold firm in relation to our original position, which was the right one.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Lee?
Can I just get some advice on what grounds of refusal do we have?
Well, that's what Councillor Cetus needs to put in wording, a request in wording as to why we have to refuse this or not support it. Councillor McCarthy.
If my understanding is that simply is that council will not support the application. I was wondering if that's possible.
Yeah. And there are no grounds.
I've got to give the council frank and fearless advice.
We need grounds.
I really caution against this approach. The focus of what we put in the report for you is to say that council is really obliged to consider the application on the merits of what's in the current planning scheme. The issues that are being referred to are from the time that has passed. The planning scheme has been changed. What is before you is supportable under the current planning scheme, and the court case referred to previously is done and dusted. Council is unable to turn its mind to that at all in making a decision. Now, Mr. Mayor, that's the law, and it's my professional advice to council. So you've got to find merits within the application before you that you see fail the current planning scheme. You cannot, and council is unable to look at past practice of conduct.
I think that's pretty clear, Mr. Rudd.
If I can propose to the mover then that perhaps there are either clear grounds as Mr. Rudd has alluded to, or that it be deferred to allow. Well, I think it was deferral on the basis of receiving further information. That information's been received, or it can be put to the vote. I mean, that's the alternative.
I'll put it to a vote. So we've got a mover and a second to not support the recommendation. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried. Council has
can I have the wording, please, just to be absolutely
sure? Yeah, I need to hear the
sure.
wording on why this isn't supported.
Because I put it to council that some council actually don't know what they're voting for.
Well, I actually think that's what happened then, because Mr. Rudd has just explained that we haven't got any grounds to refuse this application. So,
I had suggested that it be deferred to allow grounds to be provided.
Deferral again.
We've had it deferred already.
Yeah.
Hang on. Are we voting on a motion to refuse or a motion to defer?
You've already voted though.
We need to rewind the clock then.
Well, the vote has been cast, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, well, as far as I'm concerned, it's voted to not support the application. That's how I read it. It should have been made very clear at the onset. Mr. Rudd has explained. So, as far as I'm concerned, the vote was taken and councillors voted not to support the recommendation, and will now therefore notify the parties involved. That concludes that item. 5.2, application for 71 Miller Street, Thornbury. Over to the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This application seeks to construct 6 double-storey dwellings. These include 2 3-bedroom and 4 2-bedroom dwellings. The height of the development is 8.4 metres. The application provides car parking in accordance with the planning scheme for each of the dwellings. There is a waiver sought for visitor parking, where one would ordinarily be required. Although it should be noted that the way the development is designed with access of the right of way, there is the opportunity for 10 spaces to be provided for 3 of the 4 2-bedroom dwellings. Open space for each of the dwellings is configured through a combination of reverse unit balconies and ground floor open space for the service yard. As we know in the report, the site has an area of 688 square metres and is located adjacent to Cranberry 11 and is proximate to a local activity centre. As a result of the application being advertised, there have been a total of 29 objections received. I've also got an update from the report, Mr Mayor. There's been a further 8 objections received since the report was written. So these reports are written almost a month in advance, so it's quite common for additional objections to be received. So in addition to those listed on pages 26, there have been some additional grounds there dealing with site coverage and permeability runoff, flooding, forming the place for the park, dominance of garages, and lack of strategic justification. These matters are also responded to in the context of the report before you. The important point to make it is on Tramway 11, the planning scheme and the Darabin housing strategy do identify higher development opportunities for that particular corridor, in contrast to the properties that back on to this property. The application before you has been assessed and recommended subject to several conditions to be supported with the notice of decision to be issued.
Thank you, Darren. Speakers for this item?
Mr Mayor, there is an objector. I have Tony Mileto, Phil Morton or Ricky Edwards on behalf of Darwin.
Are those people here? Can I see a show of hands? Thanks. Look, you can have 1 speaker, 5 minutes, or 3 speakers for about 1 minute and 40 seconds, so work it out, okay? Or we can have 2 up there for 2.5 minutes. So if you can make your way down, those who want to. Okay, 2 speakers, 2.5 minutes each. 1 speaker, you've got 5 minutes. Time starts now, so thank you very much for joining us.
Mayor Compliance, councillors, my name is Tony Mileto and I'm addressing you on behalf of a number of residents that are directly impacted by this proposed development, and we object to the application on the following grounds. 1, the proposed scale. The site is currently a general residential zone, and as such the strategic housing framework does not justify the proposed development of 6 dwellings on a 688 square metre site. 2, site coverage. The proposed site coverage will be substantially more than indicated in the application. The overall building coverage does not include the balconies of dwellings 2 and 5. The fact that these balconies will be permeable does not exempt them from being included in the site coverage. Including the balconies, the overall site coverage will be 68%, a definite indicator that this proposal is an overdevelopment. 3, the proposed development will be added character with the neighbourhood. With its bulky, double-storey, fully attached townhouse design, its extremely high site coverage, with the removal of all the existing vegetation and minimal areas of greenery, combined with its core features of being a continuous uninterrupted row of 6 garage doors along its most prominent and longest boundaries, and masses of first-floor balconies built to within 30 centimetres off the boundary, which will overwhelm the open park reserve that it abuts. Clearly, the intensity of this proposed development does not respect the character of its neighbourhood. Councillors, we are not town planners, but we put forward to you in the spirit of reasonableness that we would not be opposed to a lessening of the density of this application. Sadly, the following points that I'm about to discuss are devastatingly life-changing for Rosie and Bill Morton at 69 Miller Street, Northview, my neighbours. 4. Overshadowing. Overshadowing by the proposed development would have a dramatic and drastic effect on their living spaces and quality of life at 69 Miller Street. Given the size and bulk of the development, the entire western side of the house will be in shade from about 1:30 p.m. onwards. All their living spaces, kitchen, living rooms, lounge rooms, outdoor deck and garden are on that side of the house and rely heavily on the light and sunlight for enjoyment of these spaces. 5. Orientation, noise and security. There is a strong design flaw in the proposed entrance to these dwellings. The current design access, except for the first dwelling, provides access from a narrow walkway on the eastern boundary of the property, which runs along the fence line of 69 Miller Street. With 6 proposed dwellings, there will be a lot of foot traffic on this walkway, and there is a serious concern about the effect that this will have on their quality of life in terms of noise, disturbance, external lights and security. 6. Privacy. There is a serious overlooking issue resulting from the windows in the proposed design. The ground and first floor east windows look directly into 69 Miller Street's dwelling and its backyard, and the south windows and balcony look directly into the private open spaces of several properties along Keon Street. There are severe overlooking implications from the western boundaries, balconies for the users of Bracken Avenue Reserve and for the properties with backyards along the Bracken Avenue parkland. The proposed overdevelopment also carries serious traffic management and safety implications. It's a complicated site. We draw your attention to the report prepared by the principal planner for this meeting. We believe it's important to note that the report reveals that there's a total of 9 aspects of the application that are neither non-compliant with the Darrabin Housing Strategy and Clause 55 or where conditions are required for compliance to occur. We prepared a brief summary of these items and for your consideration this evening. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I have lived at 65 Miller Street for 46 years. I get Thornbury, I get Darrabin. I've witnessed the changing face of our area, witnessed the first generation owners of these interwar homes pass on, and warmly watched the area's regeneration.
30
new
seconds.
residents, new families, children, new parklands, playgrounds, sporting facilities, cafes, restaurants. But 6 dwellings on a small allotment, offering reverse living accommodation. My question to you all is, what type of housing are we creating here? Who are the residents that we are attracting to our community? Who is council proposing to be my neighbours? Transients? Why? This is Darrabin. Quality of planning, quality of
Thank you very much.
housing, not quantity of dwellings on a parcel.
Thank you for that. You can resume your seat in the gallery. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Now, I understand we have the applicant here who's asked to speak. If you can join us at the front here, please, sir.
Hang on. Mr. Mayor, isn't it normal practice for applicant to speak prior to objection?
Yeah. Got the order wrong. We'll accept the application. It's out of order, but I do apologise. 5 minutes. Thank you, sir, for joining us. If you can just keep your eye on the screen.
Hi, my name's Anthony, and I'm representing the town planner for the application. I emailed you guys during the week with some letters attached that address pretty much all the issues raised in the objection letters and the issues raised tonight. So I hope you guys read those letters. You also would have seen that in the email we were just a little bit frustrated because most of the objectors didn't live in the area or close to the subject site, but we do, we are aware that the neighbour has objected, and we appreciate that. I think the main thing for this development is that the subject site's located within the catchment of the Miller on Gilbert Active Activity Centre. On Miller Street, the subject site is located, it's a substantial housing change area, and Miller Street is considered a primary Multi Street. So what we're saying is that the development has strong strategic, strong backing for approval. Not only do we say that, but also Council's Town Planning Department have said that because they have recommended an approval tonight. I'll just go through some of the issues raised now. In regards to neighbourhood character, I think what's missed is that the subject site is in a substantial housing change area, and the council report has stated that the Darebin housing strategy identifies the site as being an area of substantial change. Substantial change areas are to promote substantial housing growth and diversity due to superior accessibility to transport, services and activity areas. The subject site is proximate to tram route and the Miller Street and Gilbert Road Neighbourhood Activity Centre. So what we're saying is that the 6 townhouses proposed are appropriate for the subject site. And we've noted that in some of the objection grounds this development was compared to some other developments in the area. But probably the main difference is that they weren't located in this area and just in the street. As far as some of the issues just raised now, overshadowing. Overshadowing we comply with Clause 55, so we're not going to drastically overshadow every area as right. You said that there was a design flaw. We believe that there's no design flaw. It's purposely designed like that so the pedestrian and vehicle access points are separated. We've taken the neighbouring properties to the east and the west into consideration when we did design this project. We've done that by having pretty good ground level and upper level setbacks from the east and southern boundaries. And particularly along the eastern boundary, what we've provided, an entrance to each dwelling and what we consider a fairly good landscaped pedestrian path at that interface. And it's a shame we didn't have a consult meeting because we probably could have offered that neighbour just a couple of little things that might help with noise. And I've listed them in the letter, so I'm not sure if that's possible. We can put that as a condition of the permit. In regards to privacy, the windows along the eastern boundary are screened and comply with Clause 55, so there will be no unreasonable overlooking into that area. We say that the balconies that are overlooking the park, they're purposely been positioned that way. So the park, so people that are on those balconies can provide some passive surveillance of the park. So it's not a design flaw. The gentleman before said that there was 9 non-compliances and they were addressed by permanent conditions or a lot of permanent conditions. We're saying the non-compliances are fairly minor, and 2 of them are in relation to setbacks, but they're right at the corner of the building because the building is staggered.
20 seconds.
So what we're saying is we're respectfully requesting that you do approve this development tonight and take the planning's recommendation on board and approve this development.
Thank you very much. You can resume your seat in the gallery. Questions from councillors? Should have been circulated earlier. Questions from councillors whilst this is being circulated. Question, Councillor Oliver Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, just in relation to a point that the applicant made about a consultation meeting. Given the applicant's willing for a consultation meeting, to our officers, would it be appropriate to defer this item?
Mr. Mayor, I really can't comment on how the committee should exercise its discretion for recommendation.
and Mr. Mayor, a supplementary question. Could I get a time frame?
Mr. Mayor, the matter's due for decision. Certainly, any matter that comes here is probably over the 60 days without reporting periods. And I know it's been time to
Thank you. Questions about the application itself? Councillor Lee.
I've got two questions, Mr. Mayor. Question number one is in relation to the zoning of the laneway that's used to access the property through driveway. It's residential zone 1, so is it on title as private land or is it a council land?
it's actually on title as a right of way. So
but ownership? Is on council owned land. Okay. Second question is, and you may or may not be able to answer this, why did the applicant choose to have the doorways facing number 69 to the east when they could have easily put it on to the western side, therefore minimising the impact?
You're correct, Mr. Mayor. It's a difficult question to answer. Where the planning scheme looks for direction in terms of the park, there's supposed to be passive surveillance. That's achieved by the location of the balconies. So I'm not sure if it's a question about that, or alternatively, it's the primary street. So the right of way is treated the same as a rear laneway. So it's okay to have the garages facing a right of way, but it wouldn't be okay to have Miller Street, for example, lined with garages. And we'll be looking at the front door and a place of entry. The planning scheme requires for Miller Street, but not so much the right of way.
Councillor McCarthy.
There seems to be a strong reliance upon reverse living, and I just wanted to just get a bit more information from our officers in relation, and we've just received some extra information from the residents as well, just in relation to the assessment of this in relation to the diversity of housing stock and the type of housing stock that we're looking for, given there is a strong reliance upon reverse living, which brings access issues for people with disabilities. So,
Mr. Mayor, this area is one of the few areas that's identified as high change because of the train route. In same percentage terms, I think overall that land constitutes less than 4% of the municipality. There's also some commentary on page 38 of the officer's report where council has essentially brought an application to a refusal or non-support on the grounds of reverse living. And there's some commentary there from a tribunal case that will give council some insight into if that was to be a ground for refusal in our view. That's likely to be the way that VCAT would adjudicate on that particular aspect if it was a ground for refusal.
Thanks,
so just to provide clarity, and I have noted the officer's report, but so if I'm correct, reverse living in and of itself is not a sufficient ground, but it is part of the neighbourhood character consideration.
Mr. Mayor, the reverse living, whether we like it or not, the planning scheme allows it as a legitimate tool. There's some moderating aspects, proximity to open space, and arguably location to local centres, access to transport, probably also relevant matters. In terms of, it's understood and appreciated where the question is coming from, there's also obviously some nuances about access for all, access for people with disabilities. Well, it's probably fortunate that there's some containment over where reverse living can and cannot occur. So generally it's encouraged near activity centres or in areas where our planning scheme saying should be more intense.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
What type of treatment would be used on the balconies?
The balconies are required to be, I think they've got just a glazing treatment. They're not overlooking the ones that are overlooking the park.
What height was that again? Sorry, I didn't find it in the report.
Yeah,
so the normal standard height with opaque glass, is it, or? Okay.
Whereas if they were overlooking the space within 9 metres, they meant to be obscured.
Yep.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I noticed that in the front of the premises there is a power pole. Will the applicant be removing that power pole?
Look, I can't answer that, Mr. Mayor. If the power poles were required to be relocated as a result of the development, it doesn't appear that that's the case when the plans.
It does or doesn't?
It does not appear to be the case where it's located in the plans.
Councillor Gregor?
Yeah, just two quick questions, Mr. Mayor. One is in relation to car parking. I noticed there on page 39, the compliance summary, there's no mention there that given that there are 6 dwellings, 1 visitor car parking is required, so it would not meet the standards. I understand it's in the body of the report, but it's not in that table in relation to not meeting the standard of providing for a visitor car park. Am I correct there? Because I'm not sure which way to read that.
It's in the end, Mr. Mayor, 5206 is actually a separate assessment. The assessment in the table is an assessment against the res code provisions. Parking provisions arrive, I know it's a nuance, Mr. Mayor, in the assessment of 5206. And that's identified as a trigger to determine where councils can exercise its discretion on that.
Councillor Walsh?
Sorry, I had another question.
Oh, Councillor Gregor.
A supplementary to that, but just to understand that this does not meet the standard because it fails to provide 1 extra car parking spot for visitors. Is that correct or not?
Mr. Mayor, no, it's 5206 suggests that a visitor space is required. It's different, it's not a standard. It's something that council is required to look at the contextual situation and can exercise its discretion.
Okay, if I could just follow that line of thing. But I understand that where the site is actually in front of a tram stop. And how does the contextual situation therefore apply in allowing for on-street car parking when for about 50 metres in front of that property there are parking restrictions as a result of the tram stop?
Yeah, that's picked up in the report. What I did point out in the introduction, and if you look closely at the plans, there are several there where technically it doesn't count as a visitor space, but practically they can be used exactly as such. 3 of the 4 2-bedroom dwellings allow for a visitor space to be parking. So by default you do have some visitor parking, and it also has access to the tram, and there are a number of other comments there that have been supported by council's transport plan.
And my second question is...
It's almost debating, Councillor.
No, it's not debating. I'm asking questions just to get clarification.
Well, we've had the whole weekend to ask
these
questions.
questions ahead so that we all can hear them. The second question is in relation to the site coverage. I understand that the site coverage, through you, Mr. Mayor, is 59% in the report. But I just wanted to get some clarification because I think the objector raised an issue that it may be exceeding the site coverage as a result of the positioning or something to do with the balconies. Could I get some further clarification on that point?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, what the objector's been saying is that some of the balconies are cantilevered over the site. And the assessment, the strictest rule is it's the base plate coverage, and the objector's simply highlighting it's anonymous.
That's correct. Councillor Williams?
I'd like to put an alternative motion.
Can we hear it?
I was going to, if Councillor Williams would be prepared to, and I understand you've foreshadowed this, but I was going to move a deferral motion.
Councillor Williams has already submitted a motion to us during proceedings over the course of the day. So, Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams.
I understand that.
Councillor Williams, can we hear your motion?
That council refuse the application on the grounds as follows. Number 1, the proposal does not respect the neighbourhood character of the area. Number 2, the development does not comply with the following standards of clause 55 of the Darebin planning scheme. A, standard B1, neighbourhood character. B, standard B6, street setback. C, standard B17, side and rear setbacks. D, standard B24, noise impact. 3, a waiver of 1 car parking space as required by clause 52.06 of the Darebin planning scheme is not supported. And 4, the proposal is an overdevelopment.
Seconder, Councillor Lee.
Second, with an additional point.
Can we hear that, please?
The proposed development will have an unreasonable adverse impact on the property to the east at 69 Miller Street.
It's another condition there for refusal. Councillor Williams.
And the amenity.
Yep.
Well, there's nothing really further to say apart from it. It is hugely impacts the sensitive interfaces of the neighbours. It is an overdevelopment. It is an unusual size and block, and I feel that it's just too much. They got the tram spot at the front, that it has no car parking available, and it just looking at it and being on site, it just doesn't fit. It really doesn't.
Okay. I'll won't take any further question or debate. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Members of the gallery, council decided to refuse that application. All parties will be notified of council's decision. The applicant will have 60 days of appeal rights should he choose to go to VCAT. All parties will be notified again, and council will now go to VCAT if the applicant does go to VCAT, and will defend our decision of refusal. Thank you. If you've come to that item, you can leave or stay for the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Can we note that as a unanimous item? Yep.
Unanimously noted. Thank you by the minute taker. Next item of consideration is 5.3, and if you are leaving, can you do so quietly, please? Next application is 5.3 for 590 Murray Road, Preston. Over to the officers.
Chair, the application at 590 Murray Road, Preston, has been received by council. The proposal is for 5 dwellings, 5 two-bedroom dwellings, each with 1 car space. 4 dwellings have ground level private open space that range between 40 square metres and 152 square metres. One of the dwellings has a balcony for its private open space of just over 8 square metres and a courtyard of 24 square metres. Notice was given, 1 sign on site and notice to adjoining owners and occupiers. 19 objections were received, which have been summarised on pages 51 through 52 and responded to in the report on pages 52 to 54. The proposal generally complies with Res Code. Minor details in respect to window type and screening is required to ensure the development complies with this Res Code standards. The proposal generally complies with Res Code, therefore the officer's recommendation is to issue a notice of decision to grant the planning permit.
There are no speakers for this application. Questions from councillors? Councillor Lee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just noticed that there is a right-of-way to the rear of the property, so therefore why are we not encouraging the applicant to use the rear way to access the property as per our adopted? Can I just get councillor's attention without the... So I'll ask again, so if there is a right-of-way to the rear of the property, why are we not encouraging the use of that for access as per our adopted policy?
Mr. Chair, through the application has been put to us with access from Murray Road. The right-of-way, the rear, I don't think is sealed. So the applicant has proposed to get direct access from Murray Road. My understanding is that there's no objection to that crossover onto Murray Road and allows convenient access for those car parking spaces.
Just, if I can just ask a follow-up question, Mr. Mayor. So what I'm hearing is that our policies are not enforceable so long as the applicant chooses to ignore them.
Mr. Chair, I don't think the policies are unachievable. We have to consider a proposal before us, and that was for access via Murray Road. Practically, it's simpler to provide that direct access through Murray Road, and if there's no objections to that, there is only one crossover to Murray Road, and that's what's proposed.
Any other questions? If not, there's a recommendation there.
Happy to move the recommendation.
Move Councillor Williams. Have a seconder.
I'll second.
Second Councillor Lawrence. There's no debate or comment. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Raise your hands, please. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Members of the gallery, council decided to issue a notice of decision for that matter. All parties will be notified of council decision. Technically, it's a permit in place. All objectors have a right of appeal to go to VCAT and will have 21 days of notification. Next item of consideration is 5.4, application planning permit 204 Victoria Road, and I'd like to declare an interest in this matter. It's an indirect interest due to a conflicting duty. The applicant's a close friend of mine, and I've actually paid for some of his service in the past. I need a resolution for someone to take the chair. Can I have someone move to fill in the chair in my absence?
I'd move that Councillor Cedars take the chair.
Councillor Cedars.
Happy to second it.
Second to Councillor Villela. All those in favour? Councillor Cedars, you're in the hot seat. Thank you.
Bye.
Don't mess up my room. That's what you call it.
All right, councillors. 5.4, 204 Victoria Road, Northcote. Yes, Julie, please take us through it.
Application has been made to council at 204 Victoria Road, Northcote. The proposal is for 3 double-storey dwellings. There will also be 2-bedroom dwellings and provide a single garage for each of them. First floor balconies are provided for each of the dwellings with a small ground floor service yard as well. Notice has been given with 2 signs on site and notice to adjoining owners and occupiers. 17 objections were received, which have been summarised on page 66 and responded to on pages 67 through to 70. This proposal before the council fails to comply with a number of Res Code standards and objectives, and the officer's recommendation therefore is to refuse the proposal.
All right. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Councillor McCarthy, you move that way?
Unless there's any other questions, I'm happy to move the refusal.
Okay.
Can I do have one question through you, Mr. Mayor? This is reverse living.
Yes, correct.
Why doesn't it say it? Can I just wonder why in the report it doesn't actually explicitly say this is reverse living?
Ms. Brown?
Is there a reason for that?
Through Mr. Chair, the application is quite clear on the plans for dwellings that have living and balcony private open space upstairs. I don't know that there's actually a technical name for reserve living. The Res Code doesn't refer to it. It's a name and a term that we have described it as we have gone through these applications. So it's more a description of how, that we've used of how the living arrangements are of that dwelling. So that's why no reverse living is mentioned specifically.
But it's mentioned in the VCAT hearings, isn't it? Is that right, through you, Mr. Mayor? Yeah. Just a
Can I take you, Councillor Villela, as the seconder?
The motion.
All right, Councillor Lawrence as the seconder. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. If we can please have that voted. If we can call the mayor back.
Thank you, councillors. Next item is 5.5, application for planning permit 672 Plenty Road in Preston. Over to the officers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This application seeks approval to construct A3 transitioning to 4-storey mixed-use development. From the street, however, it will appear and read as a 3-storey building. It proposes a ground floor shop, 3 2-bedroom dwellings, each with a car space. There is no parking proposed for the shop, although I will note, Mr. Mayor, it is an existing building that doesn't have parking. So a waiver is sought technically for the shop and from the loading and unloading requirements of the planning scheme. Open space for each of the dwellings is proposed in the form of a balcony, and these are dimensions in accordance with the requirements of the planning scheme. Council has previously refused a planning application in September 2014 for a 4-storey development. That particular development was responding to a 45-degree setback. The development before you proposes to comply with the adopted Amendment C137 that has a 30-degree setback. One of the features and constraints also of the site is its 6.4 metre frontage. It's a relatively small parcel of 203 square metres. It also has a slope. And within the adopted version of C137, the zoning will become mixed use and the height limit is 4 storeys. The application has been advertised. There have been 14 objections received. The grounds for objections and the officer's response to each of these grounds is detailed to the committee on pages 85 through to 88. The application has been assessed under both existing and proposed controls and those proposed through Amendment C137. And it is compliant with both the adopted version but also the version that was supported by the panel. And within the report there's some commentary on the recent VCAT case about what VCAT is considering to be seriously entertained policy in respect to C137. The application is assessed as complying with these requirements, and particularly council strategy to direct residential intensification along Plenty Road. The application is recommended for support, subject to conditions.
Thank you very much, Darren. We have speakers for this item.
Mr Mayor, I have on behalf of the applicant, Mr Chris McKenzie, and I also have an objector listed as well.
Thank you. Mr McKenzie, if you can join us to the front. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, councillors. This one on?
Yes, can hear you.
Thank you.
Keep going.
You've just heard Mr Rudd talk about an application about 18 months ago that came to the chamber and was refused. That was for an application that presented 4 stories for Plenty Road, and when viewed from the rear as the land falls on the east side of Tyler Street, effectively had 5 stories. Council in the chamber here refused that application, and my client made a very deliberate choice not to go to VCAT to test that decision, but instead to come back and work with council's planning officers to reformulate an application that is clearly and deliberately smaller, lower, and picking up the very directives that you set out in the adopted version of C-137 that you sent to the Minister. My client has come back to council to look to work cooperatively with your vision for the Tyler Street Centre, and now comes here with a recommendation for the officers. Not that it's acceptable despite not complying with your vision, but that we have actually done that job well and come to you tonight seeking approval for something that is all on all fours with what you have asked as the future of this part of Plenty Road. It presents 3 stories to Plenty Road, and then the design itself is almost in 2 halves, where behind the lift door, the floor level is actually dropped, so it still only presents as 3 levels to the rear lane. Your 4-story indication in C-137 for this area has a reference in your documents as a 14-metre height indicator. Because we've dropped the rear levels, we actually are 11.7-metre height. So we, as I say, it's not just that we've worked out to the edges of what you suggested or gone beyond them and sought officer support. We've tried to get well within your vision to deliver a project that you can approve, perhaps even point to other people to say this is the vision that council has for this area. So to Plenty Road, we're presenting a shop plus 2 apartments, 1 on each level. To the rear we have parking, 3 cars, 1 for each of our apartments, and above that parking there is 1 apartment over 2 levels. As Mr Rudd noted, we've provided full parking for our residents. There's no question of vehicle parking arrival, there's only 1 apartment. And our shop building currently on site doesn't have parking, so our proposal is to maintain that status quo. It technically requires waivers, but it's no real change in practice. Obviously, Plenty Road is on the tram line, and it's within the Tyler Street Centre. And as the report that's presented to you talks about, council have active plans to improve the overall parking for people visiting Tyler Street, and this shop will benefit from that as well. In the plans you have, there's a sheet at page A11 which shows the lane in which this design steps back very substantially from that rear laneway. You may know pick up on some of the other plans that our neighbour over the rear laneway has been recently redeveloped with 3 townhouses part of the laneway. So it's not just this site that is experiencing change, our immediate neighbour is also part of the change that is happening in this area. What it basically is down to is, as I've said already, we've done our very best to take the decision that you made 18 months ago, accept it, and come back and deliver what you've asked us to do. The officer has said we've done a good job of that. We're really looking to you today to uphold and back your vision and give some encouragement to applicants to actually come in and take up what you're asking them to do.
Thanks, Chris. If you can take a seat. We have the objector.
Mr George Sissis is listed to speak.
George, are you here? Thank you. If you can take a seat there. George, you've got 5 minutes to present. You want to circulate it? Sure.
I'm George Zissis. I'm objecting to components of the development. Also, there's another objector, his name is Paul Pereira, on 680 Penny Road, which is their residential house next door. Apologies to Paul, he could not make the meeting, but he's asked me to provide a photo attached here of the perspective from his house of development. The photos and some plan corrections, minor but corrections have been provided. My first objection is regard to the waste management associated with the development, which I think is inadequate. Two components. The first one is the placing of waste bins on surrounding residential streets and the impact that will have on the neighbourhood amenity. Secondly is the impact the visibility of access to the street, the residential street, through the service lane at the rear of the property is there. Personally, the development has 4 tenancies. I calculate there's 2 municipal waste bins for each of the tenancies. That's 8 waste bins that will be placed on Tile Street rather than Penny Road, specifically on 200 Tile Street, which is the first lot as we access the rear laneway. This is due to no provision in development that allows access of the waste bins to Penny Road. Waste bin storage is at the rear of the development, referred to project plan A5, and the legend D for waste bin storage. The closest access point to the storage area is Tile Street, specifically 200. If you go left, if you go right, it's a bus stop, and go right, please. Look, currently 12 bins are placed in 200 Tile Street. 2 for residents who live there, and 8 from 2 commercial properties on Penny Road, numbers 670 and 680, and the 2 attached residential properties at 670 and 680. That is an example of what I'm talking about. Right now, 200 Tile Street has got 12 bins, of which 8 are for people for Penny Road to have access to Penny Road. In addition to another 8, we're going to have 20 rubbish bins just in front of 200 Tile Street. The conclusion, I don't think the same was required, is amendments to this development are giving storage access to Penny Road, which will not impact on the amenity of the residents of Tile Street. The implication of this issue, as nearly every issue I'm going to raise, is specific to this development, as well as for long-term development of Penny Road development precinct. Amendment C137 proposals to rezone occurs. i.e., north of this development, if they are all allowed to have multi-unit, multi-purpose developments, you will progressively have, without adequate waste management being implemented, if not for this development but for future ones, we will just see progression of rubbish bins going down to Tile Street down the hill. The second impact is, imagine the number of rubbish bins lining 200, 198, 196 Tile Street. People leave their bins out on Wednesday all the way to Saturday. You'll have hazardous access from service lanes, not just this development, but the developments in the future, as well as current residents. That is my conclusion on that matter. The second issue is with regards to 2 issues: the full-story height to the rear and surrounding neighbours, and secondly, the rooftop plant visibility to the same persons. I'll check first of all to the development of the full-story height is excessive given the current building before the land. By that I refer to surrounding commercial and residential properties are already single story. There is a slope on the land.
20 seconds.
East of that development. I refer to C137 Penny Road design objectives that advise rebuilding setbacks and non-visibility should not be usually done with adjoining residential sites.
The solution of...
Thank you, that's time.
Reduce the height and length to alleviate its impact on residents.
That's time, thank you.
And I've got,
That's time, thank you. Okay, you can resume your seat in the gallery. Okay, questions from councillors? Are there any questions?
Just to check, I know it's in the report, just to check the assertion made by the applicant's representative, Mr McKenzie, about compliance with C137, just in relation to the 30-degree setback.
Mr Rowe?
Mr Mayor, if let's assume this 30-degree setback is in the planning scheme, the recommendation for you would be the same, and the assessment of the officers would be that the setback is in accordance. Now, the challenge with this side is that the side is angular, and what the design and development overlay says, the midpoint of the block is where you take that section through the setback. And if you look at the diagrams, there's a very small section of the parapet that's it's marginal enough, bear in mind it's not a mandatory control, that would be accepted in all occasions as an appropriate response.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wigger?
Just in relation, just as a follow-on, I just note there on page 93 that in regards to the 30-degree setback, that there is some encroachment in regards to that.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, exactly as I said, there's a tiny section, probably the length of the ruler, at the very top, the top floor of the parapet, that pokes above the 30-degree line, which is clearly identified on section A11 in the plans.
Just a quick follow-up, further question. Just again, in regard, because it's a very narrow site, because we're looking at the number of dwellings that we're looking at, just in regards to the waste management plan associated with that site, where will the bidders go?
Mr Mayor, there's certainly an agreement with the objector. It's not appropriate for council collection. And it's a reason condition falls expressed in the planning before you, the recommendation before you, is to actually detail that out. There are options like bin sharing, a lot of the things that the objector is concerned about. The expectation is there that sorting and that management happens within the building, and that there's a quick and a clean and efficient single point of collection at the rear of the property to reduce that impact on...
So a waste management plan is going to be included in this?
Absolutely, that's detailed in condition 4, and it's explicit in that it's to be a private contract service.
Yeah. Councillor Lee?
Yes, thank you. Just to confirm that this current plan complies with C137, but I just wanted some particular comment in relation to the 6.4 metre street frontage, how that's placed in the context of C137. Reference comments around that.
Yeah, there's in the design and development overlay, generally the sites go to the maximum are encouraged to be greater than 15 or around 20 metres, and in the case of a residential zone. But this is one of the things we're looking for is this is essentially a 3-storey building that isn't going to what the adopted maximum is.
Yeah.
And it fulfills the intention, particularly in this precinct, because it was identified as an area for 30-degree transition in the exhibit documents. It wasn't supported by the planning panel, with the recommendation of officers before the amendment was adopted that it was appropriate to maintain the 30-degree. And the intention there is the development steps down with the slope so that the impost and the visual bulk is minimised on adjoining properties. And there's been a clear attempt to do that. It will read as a full level from the street, it will read as a 3-storey, only because of that step down, so it will be visible from some properties.
So just to be clear, if I may, Mr Mayor, it's really what you're saying is that the 6.4 metre frontage is somewhat immaterial given the zoning and also the street frontage height of the proposed development.
Yeah, well, across the site, it's a storey below what council is proposing as the mandatory maximum.
Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Williams?
I'd like to put in a refusal. Alternative motion.
Can we hear it?
That council refuse the application with the grounds to follows that 1, the proposed height is excessive in the contents of the site and will present as overwhelming to the Plenty Road streetscape. 2, the sitting of the building will unreasonably impact the amenity of the neighbouring residential properties through the presentation of excessive height. visual bulk, loss of privacy and overshadowing. 3, the proposed development does not comply with the car parking requirements of clause 52.06 car parking. 4, the adverse impact on neighbouring character. 5, the proposal of an overdevelopment of the site.
Seconder.
Oh, happy to second it.
Councillor Greco, seconded. Councillor Williams, you wish to speak to it?
I don't have much to say about this, but apart from it, I feel it's an overdevelopment, considering there's a lot of going on in that particular corner where there's very narrow areas regarding the laneway. It's not a place that you can really develop a lot of apartments, and it's going to have a hugely impact on future developments. So it needs to be handled in a really strategic way, and I believe that this is a hugely overdevelopment.
If there's no further comment, I'll put that to a vote. Councillor?
I'll speak against the refusal.
Yep.
And I do so because this is one of the rare occasions where an application actually is less than what our adopted structure plan says. We went through a rigorous process. We put a proposal out to the community to try to limit development in this precinct. The planning panel talked about 4 stories. This application is 3 stories. We fought hard to get what I believe is the first 30-degree setback rule applied in any planning scheme, and I'll correct, and it's still waiting to be signed off by the Minister, but the proposal was a 30-degree setback. I was ambivalent or concerned about the waste management arrangements, but I take Mr Rudd's point that there is a requirement there for an external service, which will then change and I think will hopefully allay some of the concerns of neighbouring properties. But this is actually a rare instance where we've actually had an application that is actually well within the allowable limits under our structure plan. Usually we've got developers trying to exceed what we've approved with our structure plan. I think we'll look a bit silly if we try to defend refusal at VCAT when we've taken a very strong view about limiting development at this site, and suddenly we've got an application that's actually less than what we've said they're allowed to have. So on that basis, while I respect Councillor Williams' points, I think we've got to understand that we've got a structure plan in place that limits development, and this is actually less than what is allowed.
Thank you, Councillor.
No, I'm the seconder for this. Look, I take on board what Councillor McCarthy has said. Yes, I know that it does meet the structure plan requirements. I was one of the big advocates in relation to maintaining a four-storey height. But in terms of looking at applications, it's not just about meeting the structure plan envelope. It has to also meet other requirements of our planning scheme, and this clearly fails on the other requirements which are associated with car parking. And also, I'm not convinced in regards to the waste management plan whether an appropriate plan can be devised for this particular site. One thing is what you put down on paper, and then the other thing is what actually happens in reality on the street. So on that basis, I was prepared to second this the refusal, and also I'm prepared to vote against this application, notwithstanding what has been said.
Councillor Villalba?
Yeah, I'm speaking against the alternative motion because I agree with what Councillor McCarthy says. And when you look at the actual site, it doesn't really... You could argue that anything's an overdevelopment because it's so small, it's so narrow, that, you know, that argument can, at any level, an extra story could be an overdevelopment. It's narrow. I think there aren't that many options of what you can do with that site. And in light of what we've actually been presented, the revised version is I think fair and reasonable in light of in light of our scheme, our planning scheme, and in light of the changes that we would like to see in that area. I think that the arrangement for, because it's such a deep site, that it makes sense that the waste management is, because there's rear access, so it's from the back. That's fair and reasonable. I think at some stage, as you know, we've got a planning committee, we've got to say, well, this is actually, considering the limitations, considering what we want for the city, this is a fair and reasonable application. It's already been revised, and it's better than what's there now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, I'd just like to speak briefly against the amendment.
Against the alternative motion.
Against the alternative motion, rather. in relation to this application. Obviously, the application needs to be judged on its merits, and notwithstanding C137, which we understand is an adopted position of council, waiting for ministerial consideration still. Notwithstanding that, we actually need to judge this application on the planning rules that are in place now. And what I see here is an application that's looked at what we desire from the state government, and an application that supports us in our strategic work. Now, I do note on the 30-degree angle at the rear, the garage is well below that. The second level just touches on it, and that third structure just goes over a very small amount. So this is a compliance to a future desire, and I think that if we want some credibility on our strategic direction, we need to grab the opportunities when developers agree to contain development, and that's what this is. This is containing the development on this site.
Okay, close the debate. Do we should reply from Councillor Williams?
Well, due to the hinterland of the premises, looking at it from a distance down further of Tyler Street, it will look like a 5-storey development. It's important to look at what the future of that particular area will look like if we have every shop along there that starts to develop at 3-storey. So I think it's important that they need to look at the waste management. They need to look at the car parking, which will have a hugely effect on Tyler Street and Plenty Road. So as my fellow councillor, you've got to look at it from a individual, and I feel that this will have a domino effect for the buildings that butt up against it and the sensitive interface of the Hines.
Thank you. That closes the debate. So we're now putting a vote for an alternative recommendation for refusal. So all those in favour of the refusal, please raise your hands. Those against? That motion is lost. We have another motion.
I'll move the officer recommendation.
Move the officer recommendation. Second to Councillor Villella. We won't go to a debate. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Members of the gallery, council decide to issue a notice of decision for that item. Technically, appointment has been granted. All parties have been notified of council's decision. All objectors will be given 21 days of appeal to go to VCAT and challenge council's decision. Next item of consideration is 5.6, 108 to 110 Wood Street, Preston. Over to the officers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This application seeks approval to develop a building which is in 2 parts. It's over 2 lots actually, with 3-storey and 4-storey sections comprising 25 dwellings and a mixed use. The dwellings include a composition of 1, 2 and 3 bedrooms. The development is provided with a total of 41 car parking spaces. This includes 26 allocated to the dwellings. So the additional space is for the single 3-bedroom dwelling. So there's a combination of basement and undercrop parking for the site. There is parking provided for the medical centre practitioners, which includes 4. Open space for dwellings is proposed in the form of balconies for upper floor dwellings and terraces for ground floor dwellings. The remaining the site is zoned residential growth zone. It was one of the areas subject to the recent amendment C147. The site itself is located on the corner of Wood Street and Albert Street, so it's in a prominent location and takes over 2 former allotments with a total area of 1,356 square metres. So it is a considerably large redevelopment site. The zoning in the Darebin planning scheme and the Darebin housing strategy does encourage and support small-scale apartment forms such as this up to 4 storeys in height. The application has been advertised. There have been 15 objections received. The grounds of objection and the officer's response to these concerns have been raised are detailed on pages 106 through to 108 of the officer's report. The application has been assessed as having strong alignment with Council's housing strategy and planning scheme that encourages residential intensification in this general area. The application is therefore recommended for support.
Thank you, Darren. We have a speaker for this matter, the applicant.
Yes, the applicant's listed to speak, Mr Mayor, Nicky Taylor of Devcon Planning Services.
Thank you, Nick. If you can join us at the front here, make yourself comfortable. You've got 5 minutes.
the opportunity to speak. First of all, I'd like to just start with the objections. I understand that the officer's report, there's a few different numbers of objections in the report. There's actually 15 objections, not 22 and not 16. Only one of the objections comes from an adjoining property. All the others are remote from the site. All of the objections, including the one from the next door neighbour, the man developing the site next door, is the pro forma objection that you've seen no doubt countless times before. None of those objections include a statement as to how people would be individually impacted by the proposal. In support of the application, the site and the surrounding land was rezoned, as Mr. Ward just said, by council last year to the residential growth zone. The rezoning included specific design requirements, including reference to the garden apartment typology outlined in council's residential built form guidelines, which is a reference document in the planning scheme. Specific built form requirements were put in place in Design and Development Overlay Schedule 19 and Schedule 2 to the residential growth zone. Variations to res code requirements allowing less restrictive requirements of side and setbacks and walls on boundaries, etc. were included. Pre-application meetings were held between council officers and the architects involved, at which these matters were discussed, and the development before you tonight has been designed to be fully compliant with the guidelines and provisions that council introduced as part of Amendment C147. We're very happy with the officer's recommendation, apart from condition 1H. It requires the setback of the development to its west side boundary to comply with standard B19, which is the standard relating to daylight to existing windows objective. It should be noted that high walls on boundaries and west side and rear setbacks are allowed. The dwelling is deemed to be affected by this standard is at 112 Wood Street. Importantly, they have not objected to the application. This may be because their land is likewise a residential growth zone and they are looking to redevelop their site. This would make sense, as you can see from this photo. The dwelling on this land is in poor condition. I'm happy to circulate that if you like. The western half of the house has basically dropped and is no longer level with the rest of the house. In short, we would submit this house is barely habitable. This is designated for higher density development and will likely not be there in the short-term future. In this context, and in the context of all the residential design guidelines, condition 1H will severely compromise the design of the proposed development and will result in the loss of mixed space maternity apartments. In this context, protecting the amenity of habitable room windows, which may not even be there this time next year, is short-sighted and unreasonable. We respectfully request that this condition be removed. We're happy to look at the house next door, which we're supposed to be protecting under condition 1. You can see that it's in very poor condition. In summary, we'd just like to say that the proposal exhibits a high level of compliance with what council themselves have sought in under Amendment C147 and the residential development guidelines, and we respectfully request that council approve the recommendations subject to the changes suggested.
Thank you. If you finish, you can resume your seat. And questions from councillors to officers. Any questions? If not, there's a recommendation.
I'll move it.
In that question, Councillor Walsh has moved. Have a seconded. Anybody wish to speak? If not, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried. Members of the gallery, council decided to issue a notice of decision, technically approving for that application. All parties have been notified. Should the objectors choose to go to VCAT, they'll have 21 days to do so once they receive council's notification. Next item of consideration is 5.7, number 60 Browning Street in Kingsbury. Over to the officers.
Mr. Chair, applications been made at 60 Browning Street, Kingsbury for a medium density development that has 3 double-storey dwellings. Each of those double-storey dwellings are 3 bedroom. Perfect space ranges in division from 40 square metres to 166 square metres, and a single garage and 10 car spaces provided for the dwellings. Notice was given with 2 signs on site and notice to adjoining owners and occupiers. 15 objections have been received and they're summarised on pages 124 through 125 and responded to on pages 125 through 127. This proposal generally complies with the rest code. There's some minor details in respect to windows, screens, shadings that are required as condition 1 to ensure that the development complies with rest code standards. As the proposal generally complies with rest code, the officer's recommendation is therefore to issue a notice of decision to grant further conditions.
Thank you very much for that, Julie. Do we have any speakers for this item? Darren?
No, Mr. Mayor.
There are no speakers, so
Happy to move the recommendation as required, Mr. Mayor.
there's no questions. Councillor Lee has moved. Have a seconder. Councillor Williams. There's no debate. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Members of the Gallery, Council decided. Those against? Councillor Lawrence is against. Members of the Gallery, Council decided to issue a notice of decision for that item. Technically, a permit has been granted. All parties have been notified. Objectors can go to VCAT should they choose to do so after 21 days of receipt of Council's decision. Thank you. Councillors, next item is 5.8, 22 Preston Street. Preston, over to the officers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This application seeks approval to construct a 3-storey residential development containing 6 2-bedroom dwellings. The application provides a single car parking space for each of the dwellings in the ground floor course and seeks an exemption from visitor parking. Open space for each of the dwellings is configured through a balcony accessible to a living room of each dwelling. Reverse living, Mr. Mayor. As detailed in the report, the site is located within the Preston Central Structure Plan, quite close to High Street, Mr. Mayor. The site has an area of 422 square metres. As a result of the application being advertised, a total of 15 objections have been received. These are outlined and responded to on pages 149 through 144. The application promotes a form of development that is encouraged under the Preston Central Structure Plan and notice the commentaries Mr. Mayor on the Preston Central Structure Plan and the fact that it encourages low-rise forms up to 3 storeys. The application is therefore recommended for support subject to conditions.
Okay, any speakers for this item?
Mr. Mayor, I attend with the President, the applicant.
Thank you. You've got 5 minutes. Keep you on the screen. Make yourself comfortable.
Good evening, councillors and attendees. Just going to echo the sentiments and statements of the council officers, noting the precinct that the proposed development is in, and it fits quite nicely in with what Darabin Council would like for the area. Noting the medium density development of 3 storeys in the form of attached townhouses, and encouraging rear vehicle access where possible, utilising the laneway that's adjacent to the property, which creates an extra on-street car park as well. So fitting those two in nicely, and it also provides a incremental change or a progression from the high street commercial area to the more residential nature of Preston Street by building slightly higher density development. Only thing to add to that is, again, as per previous application, there were 15 objections, but the vast majority were from the data group who don't live nearby this development. So there were limited queries from people adjacent. In summary as well, we've been through the we've been through the conditions that have been proposed for a permit issue, and all are reasonable and all are able to be met. So be agreeable with those. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that quick summation. If you can resume your seat. Questions from councillors to our officers. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 questions for our officers. The first question is that I noticed in the report it says the rear setback is only 1 metre. Can we just provide some commentary about that in relation to the Preston Central Structure Plan? And secondly, can you confirm that all cars can enter and exit in a forward manner in and out of this development?
Mr Mayor, the setbacks explained within the context of the report, and that's largely the result of a right-of-way. So yes, there's a technical non-compliance with the standard, but we're going to take the context of the situation that there's a right-of-way there. It's not uncommon for us to provide a recommendation to the court under those circumstances. The maneuverability has been assessed by a transport planning unit, and the question was that do they enter and leave in a forward direction? And it's certainly the intention is that they reverse into the right of way, and just looking at the turning templates here, I believe that to be the case, they're reversing into the right of way, and then that takes the interest in the forward direction.
So you can, so it's only one way forward.
Sorry?
So it's either entry or exit, but not both, in a forward manner.
They're reversing onto the right of way, and they're entering on site in a forward direction. That's not an uncommon, that's a manoeuvre that's supported.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Any other questions? If not, there's a recommendation there.
I'll move the recommendation.
Move Councillor Lawrence to the second of Councillor Cetus. If there's no debate or discussion, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? 1, 2, 3. That item is carried. Members of the Government, Council decided to withdraw notice of decision for that item. Technically, a permit has been granted. All parties have been notified. Objectors will be advised if they choose to go to VCAT once they receive Council's notification, have 21 days of appeal rights. Next item of consideration is 5.9, 293 Station Street in Fairfield. Over the officers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. With your indulgence, I need to highlight some omissions in this report that I need to circulate. And they concern the recommendations, and in particular, there needs to be some additional conditions, and these relate to landscape requirements. Circulating an addendum which it's basically the omission of the standard landscape condition, which you'll see appear on any of the previous items, Mayor. And it's simply to provide for the requirement of the landscape plan. There is also, for those playing close to the report, Mr Mayor, you'll notice on page 169, the officer's report refers to some commentary on standard B29 and that a condition should be required. That condition does not appear in condition 1 and should read condition 1J, the dimension of the secluded private open space of the dwelling one be increased in depth to a minimum of 3.9 metres to ensure compliance with the standards. The plans before you show that at 3.5 metres. Now, Mr Mayor, the application I'm describing is to construct 5 double-storey dwellings. All of these dwellings contain 2 bedrooms and a single garage. Open space for each of the dwellings is configured through a combination of reverse living and service yards for 3 dwellings and conventional ground floor open space for the bookends of the development, the front and back dwellings. The site has an area of 779 square metres. It is zoned general residential zone Schedule 2. The application has been advertised. Again, there are 15 objections that have been received. These are detailed and responded to on pages 160 to 163 of the officer's report. The application has been assessed and with those conditions is able to achieve a high level of compliance and is recommended for support. Just to recap, the standard condition that we agreed is condition 17 requires the submission of a landscape plan as a standard requirement, but there is an omission of condition 1J which deals with the issue raised on page 169 to do with the minimum dimension to comply with the solar access requirement for public open or private open space.
Thank you, Darren. Speakers for this item?
Mr Mayor, we have David Giovanni on behalf of the applicant, and I also have
Thank you, David. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening. Good evening, councillors, and thanks for allowing us to present to you. Firstly, I'd like to mention, councillors, regarding this site, it's a very large site. It has a wider than average frontage of 20 metres and a total area of 779 square metres. So not a tiny site, very generous, large parcel of land. On top of that, it's not in a back street or a court. It's on Station Street, which is a Vic Roads declared main road, which is an optimal location to have development. Now, this is not an intense development. We're not putting a large apartment building with basements. It's simply townhouses. And if you note from the officer report, the res code assessment, we'll just turn to that for a moment. There's 34 standards in res code, 34 points that they're going to comply with. We meet all of those, except for one, which is B29. And you heard Mr Rudd earlier talk about 1J to remedy that. We don't contest 1J. So effectively, with the council officer recommendation and the introduction of 1J, this development will tick every single of res code standards, 34 of them. So there's evidence to you that this is not an overdevelopment, not something that's pushing the boundaries or trying to squeeze as much as it can into the site. It's a comfortable application, and you can see that also with the site coverage. We're at 45%. Yes, we have some balconies, but all dwellings have generous ground level courtyards where you can get some generous canopy vegetation and setbacks that provide some space to the development. It's 2-storey townhouses. We regularly see these in the area. There's plenty of examples down Station Streets. And if you just turn to the ground floor plan, just as viewing it from the street, now typically along Station Street we'll have a house with one driveway, a house and a side setback. If you look at our floor plan, ground level from the street, we've got a driveway, and on the bottom of the page on the southern side, we've then got the built form and then a side setback. So again, that rhythm of spacing is maintained in the streetscape. Now we've received 15 objections, that's why we're here tonight. I'd like just to highlight that just one of those objections is from a direct neighbour, being the property to the south. All other 14 are from the data group who are not from the local area. Now, this is not a contentious or controversial development, just the one objection, but I'd like to talk or respond to some of the objecting points that have been raised. Firstly, if you can turn to the shadow diagrams, please, councillors, which is the last page, the last plan on your agenda item. And if you then look at the plans, let's look at the top left-hand corner, which is the 9 AM shadow. You'll notice there's a shadow plan that's been prepared for the fence line, and our shadows fall within the fence line. So there's no shadows beyond the fence at 9 AM. Then the top right-hand corner, you've got the midday shadow. And again, there's negligible encroachment. We're talking minuscule amounts, centimetres beyond the fence in some points only. And then at 3 PM at the bottom, we don't go past the fence. So effectively, there's no shadowing, more than comfortably complies with the standard. Then if you look at visual bulk, councillors, and go to the upstairs area, visual bulk is where we're overwhelmed by developments. You notice that upstairs we've got setbacks of about 4 metres. Now under res code we need about 1.8. So we don't just meet the minimums, we double them and plus some more. So again, further evidence of the development is comfortably working in its context. Overlooking, there is no overlooking because we have screens that comply with the relevant standard. And on top of that, councillors, if you look at the ground floor plan again, just the ground floor plan, you'll notice you look at the objector's property to the rear, but they actually have their driveway abutting our site. And along their driveway, they've got a shed, they've got a series of sheds, you might even be a garage there. Well, it's actually not the driveway, it's the side of their house, but there's numerous sheds there that provide easy buffer as well. So our submission to you, council, is that they'll see our development, will it impact on them? It's a clear no. The final point I'd like to address to you tonight is on the reduction of 1 car space. And just to make our point here, could you turn to the site plan? So just after the aerial, the first plan is the site plan, which shows the existing conditions. And if you look at the curb on our site at the moment, you'll notice there's currently 2 crossovers. So the site presently has 2 separate crossovers. Obviously you can't park the car in front of the crossover. As part of this new application, we go to the ground floor plan, you're only going to have the 1 vehicle crossover. You're going to reinstate one. So what happens is you've got an extra opportunity to park a car on the street. So really nothing's lost. Yes, we're waiving one, or we're creating a car space. Also, you might recall we had a 20-metre frontage. We've only got 1 crossover at 3 metres, so 17 metres curbside outside our site. We can park 3 cars outside our space. But ultimately, we're not losing spaces because we're getting into the crossover. So, councillors, we've worked hard with your officers. It ticks every single box. We ask that you please reward us for that.
Thank you very much. Right on time. Thank you for that. If you can resume your seat. We now have an objector who's asked to speak. Shane, are you here, Shane? Shane Collins? Thanks, Shane. If you can take the front there, and you've got 5 minutes as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I'm Shane from 295 to the north of the property, I think that is. Just the main objection we had was Unit 5. Just there, that brick wall that's adjoining our boundary, we have a pool that is not even needed in that wall. So it's just really that bulk, that excess bulk just adjoining the property. And all of those windows being 4, 3 and 2, even at 1700 high, we still feel that there's still opportunity for people to be, I guess, looking into our pool area, which is directly visible from those windows, and also looking straight into the kids' rooms. And yeah, and also with that wall for Unit 5 is also going to be excavating right next to, we have a brick wall there as well, which we're concerned about having excavation done near that wall, just for possibility of collapsing. And that was about it.
Okay, well, thanks for that. If you can resume your seat. Over councillors now for questions. Are there any questions? Councillor McCarthy.
If we can just get an officer response to the points raised by the objector, just concern on a couple of fronts there.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I draw councillors' attention to condition 1F, and some commentary around overlooking on page 167 of the officer's report. And it agrees with the concern to some extent and suggests and recommends that the fence height be raised to improve the level of privacy for the adjoining residents. The concern about building and construction damage, that's for a process beyond the planning process. The planners and their assessment are unable to turn their attention to that, but it's certainly a strong matter for the relevant building surveyor to turn their mind, and there is certainly a responsibility for public precaution and protection for building properties.
Councillor Gawler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through you to the officer. Excuse me. How many of the dwellings are reverse living?
There's, as I said, in the...
Because I can't find that information, sorry.
So three of the dwellings have a combination of ground floor courtyards and upper floor living areas and balconies. So the 3 in the middle are reverse living. The 2 either end, so the front dwelling and the rear dwelling, have conventional ground floor open space only.
Right.
So their living areas are from there on the ground floor. The 3 dwellings in the middle, their living areas are on the first floor, and that's why we're reverse living.
Plans are pretty clear, yeah. Any other questions from councillors? If not, we have a recommendation. Councillor.
I'd like to move.
Councillor Curtis has moved, seconded Councillor Williams. If there's no debate or discussion, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Members of the gallery, council decided to issue a notice of decision for that item. Technically, a permit has been granted. All parties have been notified of council's decision. Should objectors choose to go to VCAT, they'll have 21 days of right of appeal rights, should they choose to go there. And also to include the additional conditions which have been circulated, which will form part of the permit conditions.
So move, Mr. Mayor. That suppose another motion.
That's it. No, that's been included, circulated as part. Next item we're considering is 5.10, 31 Gregory Grove in Preston. Over to the officers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Application has been made at 31 Gregory Grove, Preston, and the proposal is for 4 dwellings, 3 double-storey and 1 single-storey. All of those dwellings are 2-bedroom dwellings. 2 of these have secured high open space in the form of balconies, ranging from 8 to 10 square metres. Both of these have some small area of ground level open space as well. The remaining two dwellings have ground level open space that range from 35 square metres to 55 square metres. All of them have single garages. Notice was given one on site and notice to adjoining owners and occupiers. 11 objections have been received, which has been summarised on page 182 and responded to on pages 182 to 185. This proposal generally complies with the Res Code. There has been some small alterations required as condition 1, which increases some boundary setbacks. There's been required a condition to reduce the built form marginally, and a small increase in the secluded private and open space area number 3 was required, and that's the 5 square metres that needed to be bolted up to 40 square metres of open space, and only 20 required. The remaining details required relate to windows, screenings, and dimensions of car parking accommodation. The proposal therefore generally complies with Res Code, and the officer's recommendation is to issue a notice of consent for the plan permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. There are no speakers for this item. No. Over to councillors with questions. Are there any questions from councillors?
No questions, and I'll move.
There are no questions. Councillor Lee has moved. Councillor Williams has seconded. If there's no debate or comments, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried. Members of the gallery, council decide to issue a notice of decision for that item. Technically, a permit has been granted. All parties will be notified of council decision. Objectors will be notified also. If they choose to go to VCAT, they'll have 21 days of appeal rights if they choose to exercise that right of appeal. Next item we're considering is 167173 Station Street, Fairfield. Over to the officers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This application seeks approval to construct a 3-storey residential apartment development containing 20 dwellings, 21 basement car parking spaces. The development of plans before you, it appears and reads like a large mansion style residence. When you the street, the dwellings are made up of 4 one-bedroom dwellings, and there are 16 two-bedroom dwellings. Open space is in a variety of configurations. The ground floor apartments have ground floor open space, terraces. There are also the upper floors that service the balconies. The overall building height is 9 metres. As detailed in the report, the site is located close to the Fairfield Activity Centre. It is zoned general residential zone 2. It is a large site. It's on what was 2 lots, having an area of 1,168 square metres. As a result of the application being advertised, there have been 9 objections received. These are detailed in response on pages 201 to 205. The officer's report. I think it's important to point out, Mr Mayor, as detailed on page 200, there is a tension in council's municipal strategic statement in the planning scheme that defines further to what is provided in state planning policy what constitutes a strategic development site. There's some commentary in that particular aspect which is important in the context of consideration of this particular application. Certainly bearing in mind strategic context of site, the application before you is recommended for support. It is noted, however, there's been quite a bit of work to get to this point. There is an extensive number of condition ones to deal with minor levels of non-compliance to bring the plans to a point where recommendations support to be formed. It's in their entirety, it probably doesn't constitute enough to recommend the application. First, but it is typical of a large type application in this sort of context.
Thank you, Darren. Now we have speakers for this item.
Yes, Mr Mayor, there are an applicant and there may be a few moments there. I understand we have 3 objectors listed to speak as well. The applicant is Nick Robbins. There are 3 objectors and I don't think they've known each other. So I've had a couple ask me, Mr Mayor, about how this all works. So if you could provide and explain, it would be appreciated.
Sure. Well, with the applicant, he has 5 minutes, and amongst the objectors, there's 3 of you. You've got 5 minutes between you. So, yeah.
Troy Wilson, Andrew Romney, and Lily Allen
So if you three are here, yes, is that right? Troy, Andrew and Liana, just raise your hands. 1, 2. There's only 2 of you here. Well, you've got 5 minutes between you two guys. So if the applicant, Nick Robbins, if you're here, you can speak first. And the objectors can have a bit of a conference, maybe outside or quietly. Thank you. You've got 5 minutes to present.
Thank you, Council. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight. I've got the owner of the site group here with me. The applicant agrees with and supports the recommendation of the Council's plan to regard the Council to issue a decision to grant permit subject to conditions. All the conditions recommended by the Council's planning officers are accepted by the applicant as permit conditions. The application achieves overall compliance with clause 55 of the Darebin planning scheme. The application also advances the outcome sought by Darebin housing strategy to meet projected housing needs. The introduction of the housing strategy into the planning scheme for Amendment C138 is a significant achievement that will deliver on Darebin's housing needs over the next 20 years. This property at 167 and 173 Station Street is a strategic opportunity site. The Darebin housing strategy and local policy as well. The housing strategy says that these sites are favourable for redevelopment to higher density dwellings to provide substantial housing capacity for the future. The site is well suited to the proposed residential development in that the consolidation of 167 and 173 Station Street is encouraged by policy, which says to enable developments that can accommodate a greater diversity of housing types. This is consolidated sites. The site area of 1,168 square metres is much larger than surrounding properties and is suitable for an apartment development. The site is located just 60 metres walk from the commercial zone of the Fairfield Activity Centre and is just 480 metres walk from the Fairfield Railway Station. The site is also close to bus routes 567 and 609. Fairfield Library, St Anthony's Primary School, Fairfield Bowling Club, and Brereton Park and Ruby Thompson Reserve. The proposal supports sustainability objectives by accommodating new housing for residents close to public transport, shopping facilities, public open space and education facilities. These are facilities that residents can access daily by foot. The proposal provides a mixture of dwelling types, 16 two-bedroom dwellings and 4 one-bedroom dwellings in a all-service location. The proposal makes a modest contribution to meeting the future housing needs of the Darebin community. The site's attributes are recognised by the Darebin housing strategy as favourable for higher density housing. The area's character is mixed and has already experienced a shift towards increased residential densities. The area's character includes two-story walk-up flats at 156, 159 and 185 Station Street, double-story townhouses at 177 Station Street and the Medical Centre at 181 Station Street. A 4-story apartment building has already been approved at 92 Arthur Street to the south-east, and a 3-story townhouse with apartments is approved at 192 Station Street. A 4-story apartment building at 153 Station Street is just 100 metres to the south of the site, and the commercial building in the Fairfield Activity Centre is 60 metres to the south. These buildings are also closely contributed to the area's character. The proposal has been architecturally designed in response to the area's character in a positive way. The 9-metre building height meets res code and is similar to the height of existing approved buildings in the area. It is also appropriate for Station Street, which is an alternative road in a robust environment, accommodating 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. The 3rd story is well assessed from the works below. It has a much smaller footprint than the upper levels. This is a sensitive response to steps and other buildings. The front setback of 8.65 metres extends to clause 55. The permit building is 24% also meets clause 55. The site coverage of 66.9% is appropriate on this consolidated site fronting Station Street, which is also a strategic opportunity site. The area's mixed character also includes varied amounts of site coverage, such as 134 Arthur Street, which has site coverage of 70%, and 140 Arthur Street, which has site coverage of 65%. The building is well set back off every boundary, which provides space around the building and avoids walls on boundaries between properties.
30 seconds.
This is a sensitive design that ensures no unreasonable impacts to the neighbouring properties. The proposal complies with all of Clause 55 stands in city in relation to hostile amenity impacts, including overshadowing and overlooking. It has no wall boundaries, it has no setbacks. In conclusion, the applicant respectfully asks the council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit consistent with the office.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. If you can resume your seat in the gallery. We now have some objectors who've asked to speak. So we've got Troy and Andrew. Just you two are speaking, or
yes.
Just yourself?
Yeah, Troy will also speak. I think we'll do 2.5
So,
minutes each.
yep, that's fine, by all means. So you're Andrew?
Yes.
2.5 minutes you've got, and then we'll have Troy come down. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks, councillors, for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name's Andrew Rowley. I'm town planner. I represent my client who resides at the rear of this site in Harper Street. Is our position that this proposal is basically, you know, presents a large, bulky building in mass, particularly as the streetscape and properties to the rear. There are a number of factors we say contribute to this building being over the development of the site. Specifically, the site coverage exceeds the West Coast standard, it's at 64.5%. Only one of the 4 visitor spaces required by the planning scheme is provided in this case. We note that the officer's report in the summary is incorrect. It says that there's a reduction of 1 visitor space. There's actually a reduction of 3 visitor spaces. I'm not sure if the council has picked up on this. The greatest concern, however, to my clients is the visual bulk impacts on their private open space and living areas to the rear of their properties. We note the strategic planning referral in the application notes that any design must address the building bulk at the rear interface and private open space, given there is no specific mandate either through general residential zone or local policies to support or reduce the amenity expectations for adjacent sites. And we question why the strategic plan referral wasn't adopted in deciding to implement conditions in this case. It's particularly the case in this instance where you can see from the aerials and from the plans that there are a number of quite narrow properties to the rear of this site. There's actually 4 properties that have an interface with the rear of these 2 properties. So the narrowness of the site means they have a very constrained outlook. This outlook is totally obscured by this very large, dominant 3-storey building that has quite limited articulation. It's quite prominent. The primary concern, however, is also overlooking. The first floor screens, they have horizontal screens, so that the argument, I guess, is if you're standing up, it obscures view lines over 9 metres. If you're sitting down on a balcony in an outdoor chair as I am now, looking straight through a horizontal screen, you're going to be able to see on the other side of the fence. The second floor,
15 seconds.
Second floor isn't screened at all, and we say it's a particular problem given a setback less than 9 metres from the boundaries. I did send the councillors an email over the weekend recommending some conditions that would be appropriate to deal with those matters. If the council would apply.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. If you can resume your seat, if we can have Andrew join us, please. You've got the remaining 2.5 minutes. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Your time starts now.
I'm actually Troy, but thanks.
Troy, I beg your pardon. Sorry, apologies.
I've just got some images going around it just because it gives a bit of context as to the area that is being that's around my dwelling. So I'm actually just directly to the north of this development, on the back of the block of 2 townhouses. Basically, my main issue is just the scale. It's absolutely massive. It will dominate the streetscape. Referring to the height local planning policy, clause 2206, the objective is to ensure that new development is appropriate and scale it from nearby streets and having regard to existing development on site. The surrounding dwellings are roughly 70% single story, 30% double story. There's one larger dwelling that's 4-story, but this isn't until you get to the shops. So it's a little way down, there's a shopping district there, and that backs onto a library, surrounded by shops, and this used to be at the post office. There's no overlooking or privacy issues, so this development is going to massively change the neighbourhood character around us. Developments that are noted to support the submission, they're located quite a way down south of the train line and south of the shopping district, and it's in the residential growth zone. This is not in that zone. Units and townhouses traditionally pitched. Units and townhouses would be more appropriate for this area. It would dominate the scale. So I'll just skipping through a little bit. One massive concern also is the other applicant was overlooking. With a 3-storey development, I'm going to lose all my private space. I've just spent a bit of time doing a new garden, and now I'm going to have no privacy to enjoy that in. So that's sort of disappointing. And if this application has to go through, I share the thoughts of the other objector. If they can screen the top level so I'm not losing all my privacy, that would be fantastic. Also noticed that landscaping plans haven't been made available for this week, or this meeting rather. There's pretty significant issues I think that need to be addressed, and if we can see some plans to address that and to provide a bit of foliage around the building, that'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your presentation. Okay, councillors, that concludes our presentations. We now have questions to our officers. Any questions? Councillor Cetus.
I have one just in terms of, it's probably directed through you, Mr Mayor, to Mr Rudd. What is the current state of play in terms of our planning amendments at this point? Because I've just picked up the final points of the objector. If you can just walk us through in terms of what the zoning is in this particular site.
Mr Mayor, it's general residential zone, so it sites to the north of the Fairfield Activity Centre. It is quite close. It is in that lane. These sites are picked up in the Darabin housing strategy as strategic opportunity sites, but purely by the fact that they're amalgamated to lots to achieve a larger site of neighbours that can do that. If that had been occurred, there are arguable strategic involvements that would be limited below what is significant.
I suppose I'll just note, not so much a supplementary question, Mr Mayor, but just a comment. Just that in terms of this portion of Station Street, as distinct from a recent application we just dealt with at 5.9, we've got something that lends itself to the points that the objector has made, and the fact that it is, I think, at any rate, running ahead of policy.
Yep. That's more a comment than a question, but Councillor McCarthy?
Oh, look, I'm struck by the open space, or rather the lack of open space on site, and I suppose it probably is probably a follow-on question from Councillor Cetus's point in terms of the formal development here. There's two issues of open space. One is the lack of open space for the residents on this site, or as proposed, but also the impact of the adjoining property owner, and in this case the objector. That proposal to provide some screening, is that covered at all in conditions proposed?
There is certainly some requirements. The standard, if you're within 9 metres, you comply with. In this instance, the objector has a garage located, trying to respect privacy. You
sure.
The plan to figure out which. There is a garage immediately that buffers the balcony from the secluded, what we look at as a secluded private open post. And then between the garage and, the adjoining dwelling of the objector and the property boundary of this site is a driveway. And that's not assessed as secluded private open space. So we've got to go beyond the garage before we get to that point where we're looking at the 9 metre mandatory screening.
Any other questions from councillors? If not, there's recommendations or an alternative. Councillor McCarthy.
I've got an alternative.
I'll
read out for councillors. The alternative is that the application is refused on the basis that the proposal is contrary to the character of the area, the proposal is an overdevelopment, the proposal provides insufficient open space for the reasonable recreation needs of residents, and the proposal is detrimental to the amenity of the adjacent properties, secluded private open space.
Councillor Cetus has seconded, so do you wish to speak to it?
Look, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's not a case of being in breach of specific points of res code, but rather in terms of the scale, the shape, the form. It is a very large development in a location that is simply not at the moment, and I think Councillor Cetus' point. This is not being designated by council I believe in the way that it's been presented. Certainly some medium density development might be appropriate here, but this is bigger and more dominating than I think we've certainly turned our minds to, and I think it's a case of a proposal exceeding what the current policy really provides for. So on that basis, I don't think it's consistent with our policy, but I think more specifically, I think it creates a range of unnecessary impacts on adjoining properties.
Thank you. Councillor Sears, there's nothing further to add, so... Just one point, now that I've got a formal option to do so, I think another comment, not specifically addressing this, but as a matter of principle, this really lends itself to why we need to do the strategic framework around our key major thoroughfares. We've done it in relation to St George Road, Mr Mayor, as you know, High Street and Plenty Road. I did identify some time back that we didn't have money sufficient in the budget to actually do the work in Station Street, but I think what this proposal demonstrates is the need for it. Now, as we move away from the thoroughfares, Mr Rudd actually used an operative word, which is near enough. That in of itself indicates a signal out to the market to suggest that because of close proximity, that it is quite possible, and certainly having regard to a double-sized block in this instance, that a proposal similar to the Bibiano's, which is clearly indicated in the photographs, is supportable. And it's not, but whether that is the benchmark for moving forward Station Street up to Albert Street is debatable. And we haven't had that work done. We haven't done the consultation work with our community in that regard. And I think until such time as that work is done, then we need to be mindful about what we support. And I'll finish on this point. It's in marked contrast to the position we actually took in respect to 5.9, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much. Councillor Greco.
Just one small point, if it's okay with the move in a second, just to include that the further grounds is in relation to car parking, that it doesn't meet the clause 52.06 in regards to the visitor car parking, because as it was mentioned, it's deficient by 3.
So that's going to be accepted by the mover. If you can include that, Councillor Greco, give that to the minute taker, so we haven't got that, so we get a record of it. Okay.
Just through the chair, has the motion covered the storage space and the solar access deficiencies?
I'd welcome an additional point if there's no reference to that in my motion, but
they're minor. But
well, we need to actually read them out so they can be passed on to our minute takers for accuracy. I want to hear them before we go to a vote.
So, if I'm correct from Councillor Lawrence, it was to do with the insufficient storage space.
Well, there are two internal amenity problems. One is that the storage facilities of 6 metres are not met except via above bonnet storage, which is not desirable. Number 2, the solar access for dwelling 7 remains unaddressed.
If you can write that out and give it to a minute taker, I think we've got
Happy
the
to
gist.
accept that.
And Councillor Greco's writing is out. I think we've had the debate. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Members of the other councils refuse that application. No notice of decision will be issued. The applicant and all interested parties will be notified of council's refusal. The applicant will have 60 days of appeal right should he choose or they choose to go to VCAT. All parties will be notified and be also subjected to participating at VCAT should they choose to do so. Council will go, if it goes to VCAT, to defend a refusal decision. Thank you, members of the gallery, if you're here for that item. You may leave now or stay for the last one. Endured a long night. If you do leave quietly. Next item we're looking at is 5.12, 195 to 209 St George's Road, Northcote, officers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is actually an amendment to existing application. The application was previously advertised and was the subject to considerable amount of inspection, what I call 261, in fact. Now what the application for you is seen fit to do is to increase the proposal from 6 to 10 stories, and now it is proposing 168 dwellings, a supermarket, and 8 ground floor shops. This includes 52 one-bedroom dwellings and 116 two-bedroom dwellings. Now, the council may be aware that the design and development overlay 15 is specifically for this site. So the site's excluded from Amendment C136, but has a preferred height limit of 5 stories. So the proposal before you is twice the preferred height, although the design and development overlay does specify criteria where that height may be exceeded, and that is where there is clear exemplary design achieved. The application for you in the officer's assessment and that of our expert designer is that it does not achieve that. The application is far from a state of compliance with the planning scheme, and for that reason the application falls straight to the committee with the recommendation for refusal. I can go into the application in much greater detail, but I think the report speaks for itself.
Questions, recommendation?
I'm happy to move. So just before we do, are there any objectors or...
I beg your pardon. Do we have any speakers, Darren?
We do indeed, Mr. Mayor. Rebecca Bahaslow on behalf of the objectors.
If you could join us at the front here. Thank you very much for joining us, and during the night you've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
So I'm here today representing the 261 residents who objected to the initial 6-storey plan, but also the many other residents who didn't get an opportunity to oppose this development at 10 stories. First and foremost, I need to say, as a community, we're furious at this, the audacity of this proposal for 10 stories. The hulking design takes no account of the community in which it sits. 3 years ago, the community objected to this development when it was submitted as 6-storey development. Back then, the St George's Road Resident Action Group met with council and the developer to discuss how the proposed development could be modified to be sympathetic to the neighbourhood that surrounds us and would provide better amenity for neighbours directly impacted by the development. To come back with this 10-storey development is, in the words of my neighbour of 31 years, a big FU to the community. We also feel the tack taken by this developer to force rejection by council to presumably take an amended version of plans to BCAT to force a decision outside the local context is an abuse of proper process and good community will. I know the council report you have in front of you and the words that Darren Rudd has said to you already, and we'd like to acknowledge the position put forward to you to refuse this permit. I'm sure you understand the following key issues with the design. It's definitely an overdevelopment of the site. The site has its own DDO, restricting development to 5 stories. The proposed development has come in at 10. The urban design framework specifies setbacks to minimise the visual bulk and ease of transition to the residential area by the development. The proposed design does not even attempt to comply. The overshadowing of properties, particularly to the south and the west of this development, do not comply also with the planning restrictions. Also, that the development proposes to reduce the car parking, and we all know that in a 2-bedroom unit it would be uncommon to see 2 cars, even though you're close to public transport. So there's not even enough vehicle spaces allowed for the residents to have a single car, let alone the supermarket and the other commercial dwellings proposed for the site. You can ask anyone in this room and anyone who resides in the area how difficult it is to find car parking near their own house without having this huge hulking design contributing further to parking and traffic congestion. And I should also mention that the right-of-way access proposed for this development, the right-of-way is used for other residents, and now we're seeing 200 plus cars coming in and out of this site. Just imagine that on an average working day, trying to get out. Presumably these cars would come out onto Bensborough or Ben Street and try to get onto St George's Road. Surely at this site having access to the site could be from St George's Road to minimise that impact to residents. So the supermarket is also another issue. Commercial viability. We want to see a sound design in this area. We want to see commercial entities exist and thrive. You'll note that in the block north to this side, there's already plans approved for a supermarket. That development, I believe, is going ahead. The question of commercial sustainability in this area is one that we really need to consider. And not to mention that a supermarket in this area will also contribute to the congestion that we'll see in the streets and surrounds. The environmental footprint and impact of this development is grossly out of contact with the local environment. As it stands, this proposal, these developers think they have more right to our amenity than we do. The amenity of the new residents is also pretty average, with some of the 2-bedroom units, 1-bedroom units, using borrowed light and not natural light. It's far from exemplary design.
20 seconds.
So simply, we thought that this proposal should be rejected, call upon council to uphold their planning scheme. I also call upon council to put to the state government to call this particular proposal in.
Time. Thank you very
Happy
much.
to move.
So before I know everyone's eager to knock this one on its head, but can we just ask 2 quick procedural questions, if we may, Mr. Mayor?
I think we should, yes.
The first one, and I appreciate the considered comments of the objector and the recommendation of officers, but I think it's obvious we know where this is going and what the game is. In relation to a situation like this where officers have chosen, because the application is so out of scale, to not even bothering the community by advertising, assuming it heads to VCAT in a moderated form, what is the requirement in relation to notification of residents as it goes to VCAT? Does that fall to VCAT? Does council have any powers and provisions to ensure that concerned residents are notified so they can have the opportunity to be joined as a party, given that they weren't necessarily afforded that opportunity, and fairly fair enough too in the first instance? That's the first question.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, great question, particularly given the members of the gallery are here. At VCAT, we require further notice to begin with the application. Council's starting point is that it covers the area of the initial advertising plus the objectors that have already advised that they're concerned with the proposal. That second element, where there are 261 objectors, may be challenged by the applicant, but that will be a reasonable position we'll put forward on behalf of council, I would be suggesting.
And if I can just ask a second question related to that, if I understand right, if the applicant proceeds with either this or a moderated form with a view to VCAT, and let's assume that it's this version, but then substituted plans are presented to VCAT in the lead-up, how much notice can council and concerned neighbours and residents be given of the modified plans? What is the requirement under the rules?
Mr. Mayor, we've seen this play out before. Officers are often rushing to get a report that's often not listed in advance. So the notice that we can get to get a matter for this committee's decision can be less than 2 weeks on some occasions. Usually it's up to 1 month in advance.
If I'm correct, that's not our requirements, that's actually VCAT's time frame.
That's right. What I can endeavour to do, if and it's again the committee's discretion, if there is an application to VCAT to vary who we give notice to, there is always the option for council to give notice in addition to VCAT at its own discretion.
And would that be required to be added to this recommendation to provide for additional notice to be given?
We're going to do it anyhow.
Yeah, I can provide that undertaking.
Yep.
But, it's
Okay.
Happy to second it.
I've just got a further question, if I may. Very
Question,
quick one.
Councillor Greco.
Yeah, just, I understand that the applicant can apply to VCAT to actually restrict the level of notification that occurs. In the event that the applicant is successful in that, what can the council do to ensure that the advertising in regards to when it goes to VCAT is wider than that?
The Act does allow for council to provide additional notice at its discretion. There would be my recommendation to the committee that at least objectors are notified in particular regard to
The word will spread pretty quickly, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Question. I'm sure word would spread quickly, and I would certainly expect to hear about it, particularly as a ward councillor. But in that situation, you would advise us, wouldn't you?
Mr. Mayor, if there are amended claims, it must come back to the committee. This is not a matter to be considered under delegation.
Sure.
And we'll endeavour to communicate and update council throughout the process. But I would say the assertions are pretty accurate. There's a strong chance that this committee will be doing amended claims.
Thank you, Darren.
And just so one more question, and it's just to pick up the proposal put forward by the objector about whether council could request from the minister for this application to be called in. Is that within, obviously not planning committee's powers, but is it within council's powers? Does it need a council resolution if council was to go that way, or is that something that can be done at the management level?
It would require a resolution of council, Mr. Mayor, but it's something that anybody in the general public can initiate.
Thank you.
But there is ministerial guidelines.
Yeah, we need to follow those. We just can't jump the gun.
Yep.
Okay. We have a recommendation, councillors.
Moved.
Put to a vote.
Move Councillor Walsh, second Councillor Williams.
I want to speak very briefly.
Let's hear you, Councillor Walsh.
Thanks. Look, I think we all knew where this was heading, but I think and you read the report here, and you look at the area, and I'm quite familiar with the area, obviously, but and you think to yourself, is this an amended claim? Because because the fact is, to say that this is an overdevelopment of the site is probably a massive understatement, I think. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, there's no further debate. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Members of the gallery, council decided to refuse that application. All parties be notified. And of course, if the applicant does decide to go to VCAT, amended plans are lodged, will certainly have to make a decision in relation to those. Will be notified as well. Of course, the applicant has 60 days, but I notice this application has gone through several amendments already, so no doubt we'll see this at VCAT, okay? Thank you, members of the gallery. That concludes that item. We now go to item 6 on the agenda, 6.1, general plan information schedule.
I've got a question.
Move, Councillor.
I've got a question.
Question, Councillor Lee. If we can leave quietly, please. We're still proceeding with the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to ask through you...
Excuse me. After the meeting, you can ask questions. Officer currently still here.
2 minutes, I
on
promise.
Business.
I just want to ask through you, Mr. Mayor, to officers in relation to the recent VCAT case for 425 Plenty Road, and what VCAT said in terms of the planning scheme amendment C137 and how that was resolved.
In a couple of sentences, Mr. Mayor, the crux of what VCAT was doing, we circulated this in a bulletin to council, and what it has said is that in terms of this stage we're at where C137 is submitted to the Minister, VCAT have advised council that it is to be seriously entertained as a proposal, but the elements of it that will be seriously entertained is where there's alignment between what council has adopted, what the panel has supported, and what has been exhibited.
Sorry, can you tell me to be quiet? Okay. Sorry, Darren, we just wait. I literally can't hear you.
I think that's important. That's the most important part, actually.
Yeah, we need to hear this.
Yeah, it's important to point out, Mr Mayor, there are a number of applications coming to this committee in the next month in Plenty Road. We've got a number of them, and in those we certainly do cover commentary from that particular member. So what VCAT would give less weight to is if there is a considerable variance, and that might be where 45-degree setback was recommended by the panel, and the council has adopted 30 degrees. That might be a situation, and in particular, in regard to 425 Plenty Road, that was one of the issues. And what the tribunal said is that the application's lodged an application in good faith for 45 degrees based on the exhibit amendment that's been supported by the panel. Council has now adopted at 30 degrees. In terms of procedural fairness and what they would give weight to, they ruled in that particular case that the applicant had given fair consideration of council's planning spend amendment. And further commented that if there's that degree of variation, then the tribunal is probably not going to turn its regard to say, I'm going to give that a lot of weight. But where there is alignment between, if it's 4 stories adopted, 4 stories exhibited, supported by a panel, a very clear indication from VCAT that they will deem that as seriously entertained. So a lot of the qualitative elements in the design and development overlay that try to raise the bar and standard of design are intact throughout.
Thank you for that. Okay. Well, if someone move that on, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Suter, seconded. All those in favour? Carried. That concludes tonight's meeting. Thank you very much. Don't forget, councillors, your agendas for next week are in your pigeonholes.
Thank you.
And we have a meeting tomorrow night at 7 o'clock on the dot, please. Refreshments were provided earlier, and it will be a very short meeting tomorrow night. We need to sign some documents as well. Okay. Thank you, councillors.
Honestly, can't.
You sound shocking.
Oh,